Okay, let's see. Just want to make sure everything's working. Kick might just not be working. Am I just live on YouTube? Is the Kick? Oh no, Twitch is working too. I guess Kick is the one that's just yeah. Oh no, it's working on Kick too. All right, you can get started now in a second. Oh, my hair is kind of a mess. It's whatever. Let's start recording. So this is a debate hosted by Wick TV. It's a panel show usually, but he'll do these solo debates. And this is this guy I've never heard before called Bishop, who markets himself as a lockheed liberal, and I do the same. So I'm assuming we're gonna have a lot more agreement with him than the Soy Pill, who is a YouTuber but kind of progressive, if not fully socialist, whatever. This is just a debate over the Hasan Piker the Hasan Piker subpoena in regards to his trip to Cuba. So let's just get into listening to it. And yeah, I'll provide some commentary. So I think there's a lesson to be learned in this kind of discussion. Oops. There we go.
To introduce themselves, tell you a little bit more about who they are, what their thoughts are on the subject, and we'll get it from there. I'm going to hand the mic first to Mr. Soypill, and then we'll let Bishop introduce himself. So Soypill, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
On the whole thing?
Just tell people who you are, what you do, and what are your thoughts on whether we should defend Hasan Piker. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the Soy Pill. I make video essays. I stream sometimes. Going to be ramping that up in the near future. And I think that going after Hasan or kind of ignoring this, turning a blind eye, is part of more of like a partisan, like vindictive, personal thing, which I understand, given the fact that this guy would probably say the same if it was some sort of liberal person being indicted. But that's not an indication of how we should conduct ourselves. It's irrelevant what his behavior is. It's pretty irrelevant to me if he even did break a law here, because what seems obvious to me is this is an administrative crackdown, trying to introduce some sort of chilling effect. They're not applying this standard over every single person that was on that convoy. They're not doing it to their own partisan pundits like Nick Shirley, who might have stayed in a sanctioned hotel. This is just an attack to try to silence critics, and you should look at it as a fascist government and an authoritarian move and oppose it regardless of who they're doing it to. Yeah.
Okay, glad to have you in.
So I guess already the premise, just to give Soypill a good defense of that premise, is that regardless of any potential crime that's happened, it's clearly a weaponization of the DOJ. It's a weaponization of the legal apparatus that the federal government has, and it's to target dissidents, to target political operatives they see as threats, and that in any world is bad. And I can respect that to a certain extent. I think that there's some caveats, but I think that's like a strong premise. It has to be developed a little bit more.
$10 from Pondering Politics to say, ask Soypill to Steelman Joe's definition of populism. We'll save that for maybe the meat of the discussion. But thanks for being here. We're going to get into it as we go. Next up, we're going to give the mic to Mr. Bishop. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, it's Bishop here, self-described lockheed liberal. I'm a defense contractor by day and a shit poster on Twitter by night. My take on the Hasan situation is that I believe that a lot of the dialogue around Hasan right now is talking about the illegitimacy of the government and the illegitimacy of, like, obviously, in my opinion, a fascist type government and unwieldy use of our institutions. However, I still think that it's very important that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater and just completely discredit any kind of a subpoena put out by federal law enforcement. And I think the point that I think really needs to be argued is that due to the relationship that we have with Cuba and the Cuban government, there is actually a cause for there to be serious scrutiny about political actions and government programs that happen on the island.
Interesting. Okay.
And then I guess this best defense of that premise is that while there might be some weaponization of law, in fact, this is a trend that we should see more of. We should see more of the government going after media figures who, do improper sort of investigations and interrogations into places that are, foreign adversaries in the United States. So these are both defensible positions, like fundamentally, but, we need to flush this out with some context first. And I think it illuminates why there's a bit of a difference in the merits of these arguments when it's applied to the Hasan situation.
That, I guess we'll get into it. Can you give us maybe elaborate a little bit more on that? Serious cause. Do we think that the subpoena may be legitimate? What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
I think the question is what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. I believe that now in the year of 2026, what we have across many different legal domains is we have a series of rules, regulations, and laws. And what we wind up having is we wind up having situations where people will break a law, and then maybe they'll be pursued and said, okay, well, now we're going to hold you accountable. You did break the law, but the problem is that nobody is prosecuted for that law. And so I think one of the main ways people are looking at this is they're like, oh, well, maybe Hasan violated sanctions, but number one, we don't know if we agree with the sanctions in the first place. And number two, like what we're seeing with this Turning Point USA kid, it doesn't appear that the violations of these sanctions are being applied evenly. Therefore, it is targeted. And while I think that there is certainly some truth in the unequal application of those violations, it really brings me to think about the situation with Al Capone. And don't get me wrong, I do not think that Hasan is Al Capone. I want to be clear, Al Capone killed people. Hasan is just a streamer. But we understand that the way they went after Al Capone, the way they got him was for tax evasion. And we understand that he wasn't targeted by the IRS, that the IRS was randomly like, oh, hey, we think this guy might have a problem with his taxes. The problem is he was causing all these other problems and taking advantage of all these loopholes with the.
So just to simplify this a little bit, because it's a good example in that what he's trying to say is basically just that sometimes there's behavior that is, broadly speaking, inappropriate or troublesome for one reason or another, and it can be useful to use laws on the book in a intentional way that might be seen as corrupt or uniquely targeted, but it's to bring about a larger point. And the Al Capone example being just that if someone's using or doing immense crime but it can't get caught, getting a lesser crime and getting them away in prison with that can, help give, relief to the other crimes. I don't love this as an example with Hasan because that's an entirely different argument. The argument here should be from his perspective that there's no reason not to start taking laws on the book and taking them seriously in their own right. Al Capone was investigated for tax fraud and pursued for tax fraud because the government didn't have a strong way to be able to get him for the more serious crimes. Hasan is being investigated for this because if it is true and he did coordinate his trip and media with the Cuban government illegally, the problem would be that in of itself. Like that would be the issue. Soypill's argument actually makes a lot more sense if it simply was the Trump administration using laws on the book to go about, a roundabout way of penalizing Hasan for other things like, say, his speech or his reach with the youth. But I think there's a strong argument on the merits here, and that's kind of, I think, where we should be oriented. But, we'll see how he fleshes that a little bit more.
Liberties that are afforded in a liberal society as opposed to an authoritarian state. He was taking advantage of them. And so we understand that they had to apply some of these rules that he was breaking to address the greater problem, which was to get him off the street. Now, I say all this in acknowledging that the legal threshold for it to be a criminal complaint is actually outrageously high. So I don't think we're even really at that level. But I do think that
now it's outrageously high, but there's it's outrageously high because the type of people who do these crimes are usually a lot smarter than someone like Hasan. An example with Tenet Media, the reason why you're never going to see any of the U.S. actors who were involved with that get hit with anything probably is because they all knew something was up, but it seems like behind closed doors, they were all very careful to not indicate that they knew that Lauren Chen was a middleman for a foreign agent. They took Lauren Chen at her word. If they had admitted that we knew this was coming from Russia, blah, 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 but Lauren Chen was the middleman, then you'd have some serious problems. You'd have some serious concerns. Hasan's openly on stream saying that he was using a middleman to coordinate his trip with the Cuban government so that he could have consistent internet access. That is not something that someone does when they are trying to cover their tracks and be careful. It seems like it was a combination of either ignorance and or thinking the government wouldn't do anything about it because they never do. These sort of FARA issues are never really pursued.
The hostile nature of the Cuban government and the
Cuban it might not be FARA. It could also just be foreign espionage issues as well.
Island is unbelievably not talked about. A lot of people talk about Cuba as if, it's just another island down there and we had a shaky past with them. But to not go on and on and on, the fact of the matter is, according to Hasan, the trip was organized with the Cuban government. So this was a Cuban government approved political program, and in it being a political program, that means that the Cuban military and intelligence services were somewhat involved. Even if that means that their involvement was, we approve, it means that they were involved. And I think that's way more serious than anybody's talking about right now.
Yeah, so a few things. One, my understanding is not only did he approve this with the Cuban government, because yeah, no fucking shit, you have to let the government know before you take a giant ship full of 20 tons of supplies and drive it up to their border. So of course they let them know. He also went through OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Commission, or whatever that stands for. So he went through the same government that is subpoenaing him right now. So the idea that this is like some...
Just to be clear, you can go to the government and be above board with your communications with the government, with your visa prep and your travel, and still do illegal things in spite of that. That's every foreign espionage crime has probably been perpetrated by someone who was doing a lot of things above board, because of course you're not going to be able to get to the country without doing that. So just because someone went through the proper channels and part of their travel does not mean that they were above board the entire time.
Cuban coordinated back deal to subvert American interest is pretty ridiculous to me. The second thing is this subpoena isn't alleging a crime even. It's just, hey, let's go after you by looking into you, assuming that you did something bad, but we're not sure yet, which is very clearly like, let's try to investigate this person to produce some sort of chilling effect. And third, you did this whole Al Capone thing. Well, what's the Al Capone equivalent that Hasan is doing right now that is like, well, this guy's doing something illegal that we can't get him through, and it's a loophole, so let's go after him. The thing he's doing is talking shit about the government. He's shitting on Democrats, he's shitting on Trump, and you can not like that, and that's fine. I don't like some of the stuff he says. In fact, I don't like a lot of the stuff he says, but I would never say, and this is why we need to find some sort of legal loophole, like, hey, look, you went 55.
So he's running the Al Capone thing partially, but then the issue is the material analysis he's doing is crazy. Hasan does talk shit about the U.S. government, sure, but that's not what the subpoena is for. The subpoena is seeming to indicate that the U.S. government thinks that Hasan was illegally communicating and taking direction from the Cuban government in relation to his trip and the media he produced after. That is so different than him just talking shit about the U.S. government. And we really should be concerned about people who use the United States sort of laissez-faire policies with freedom of speech and abuse it to do foreign propaganda that does violate laws. Perhaps those laws aren't, followed through often, and perhaps they'll only be followed through for partisan reasons. But that's honestly better than the inverse of it just not being policed at all. So it's not to say Hasan is guilty or not, but this is a very, very fake way to represent what's even at stake here, or what the question even is.
In a 50 zone, let's lock him the fuck up. That doesn't justify it. So what do you think justifies what he is doing right now, that the Cuban government colluded with him to subvert American interests, or some sort of insane, back deal here that you think is actually worth arresting this person over? Or what he's doing outside of this, that this side, not real thing, but this side project to arrest him is worth arresting him over?
Well, let's start off with some ground terms here. We're not talking about a legal loophole. A lot of people are using a lot of this loose language to talk around the issues. This is not a loophole. I went to Cuba personally, and when I went to Cuba, I kept a notebook with me, and I documented every single thing that I did, because the legal permissions that I went to Cuba with, as Hasan noted, are very strict. And guess what? When I came back, I was questioned on it. This is not some legal loophole that somebody is, technically.
And notice he's not even connecting this, but this is where he should have mentioned as well, is that he's purposely describing this guy is a defense contractor, if I remember correctly. He's keeping that notebook because he knows that even if he goes through all the proper channels to get to Cuba, there is no guarantee that you are following all of those guidelines when you're actually there physically, and the government's going to want to know if you did. So that's another point to the depth he's trying to describe here.
It's 55 and 50. This is actually very serious. And going to an island that is actively involved in military and intelligence operations is perhaps the most aggressive intelligence entity addressing the United States. Consistently houses Chinese and Russian intelligence facilities. This isn't a joke. And by the way, to put this into comparison, because like I said, we keep on talking over Cuba it's just some interest. It's just some interest. If somebody went to Russia and started spending money at Russian military-owned premises, and then they came back and they said, hey, we're going to look into whether you violated any sanctions, I don't think anybody would be freaking out about it. In fact, I think most people would be saying, hey, wait, what? You spent money at a Russian military organization? Maybe we should look into it. And like you said, I think it's right. Number one, from my perspective,
look into it for what? What's the risk here?
To see if well, I think the risk here is that he is collaborating with Cuban intelligence apparatus. I mean, one of the main things. One of the main things that he said when he and one of the main things people were talking about that he said was that the Cuban government reached out to him through an intermediary about having consistent internet access. So what is going on with him having consistent internet access and consistent power access on an island in the middle of a blackout? Was that a military network? Was that a military generator? And if he was on the military network,
these are all super important questions, because again, if there's potentially a way, but you have that sort of conversation, you have things set up, and it is all according to the laws of the United States. But bro, if you're coordinating with the Cuban government to ensure that you have like what would be for them military access or military grade access to the internet services, because like he's mentioning, this is a rolling blackout. Like, not only is it illegal, but the American public should be privy to that information. Like, it should be clear, if you're listening to this gigantic figure in media, that you should know if he's receiving direction or coordination from a foreign entity, especially a hostile foreign entity, that's in the state sponsor of domestic terrorist list. There's only 4 countries in that list. We should know who is there, who is operating with that.
What if all the FBI wants is possession of his laptop to start going through the records of getting to the bottom of the details of that military military internet network? There's like 20 dozen different things here, and Hasan himself has said, and this really seems to be the case, he is not the target. He doesn't think he's the target. I don't think he's the target. It seems like, honestly, it seems like Code Pink isn't even the target. It seems like the target might be whoever the main financial backers are of Code Pink. And to sit here and say that an intelligence agency has absolutely no interest in a series of influence operations that are addressing ongoing military conflicts. I don't understand how we can sort of live in that world where it's just like, oh, why would the FBI be interested? Of course they're interested.
So this to me is one of those things where people will look at the laws in the books for immigration and say, well, of course they broke the law. Don't you think they have an interest in investigating the laws that they broke? And you're kind of deferring to like these laws that exist, which by the way, haven't always existed and changed significantly under Obama and then were reversed in 2017. And then to say that this is not some sort of agenda-driven thing, to me is belying.
Like, just to be clear, it can be agenda-driven, and that can be problematic in some way, but the very nature of being agenda-driven doesn't change anything about the material analysis. Like, we should want laws on the book enforced even if we disagree with them in the moment, because the second that you start letting things like that slide, it is a slippery slope. You have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, the problem is you start to lack precedent. So when the next Democratic administration comes in, I want them to go hard against people on the right receiving money from Russia, or people who received money from Hungary, or people who are receiving money from Latin American right-wing sources. Like, that should be something that we go after. And it should be transparent to the public. And, you know, while, again, is the partisan angle ideal? No, but it's better than nothing. And it's significantly better to build that precedent, to build that not only legal precedent, but precedent for public approval, before just giving it all up because, you know, what Soypill or whatever, if he actually is a liberal and he's not just a socialist masking as a liberal, like, this affects all of us in a very distinct way, because the liberals are not the ones receiving foreign funds or foreign direction or foreign help. It's the leftists. It's the people on the MAGA right. It is not liberals. So, you know, even just selfishly, you're shooting yourself in the foot by not wanting this to be, you know, deliberated upon in general. Like, that's just whatever.
The point that this is clearly an agenda-driven thing, and whether or not they're targeting Hasan and Code Pink, the point of this is to, you know, use them as this sort of surrogate for we're attacking Cuba. And the conversation right now is being centered on, should Hasan get in trouble for this? If you think there's a good faith effort by an intelligence agency to go through Hasan's computer to find potential adversarial information, maybe this is totally possible. Do you think that's why he's being centered at these articles? Do you think that's why the conversation is centered entirely around him and not what you're saying? Because you're giving the most good faith possible interpretation of what an administration might be doing, which is to me absolutely ridiculous given everything we've seen come out of the Trump administration. Like, you would have to be delusional to say anything like this is that, unless it's on paper and ignoring the last 8 years of Trump that we've seen.
Well, one of the things that I when I listen to you and a panel of people speak about this on Live and Learn, I noticed that everybody's initial response was, well, this is coming out of the Trump administration, so we immediately need to completely discredit it. And while I think that large political things coming from the Trump administration warrant serious scrutiny, they warrant seriously going back over some things, I think it's utterly ridiculous to live in the world where we don't like the president, so we're just going to discredit literally everything that happens from the government, period. Because there's no real difference.
Did I ever say that?
I mean, that's essentially your argument. You said that I've got to be delusional to be asserting.
What information do you think that they'll get out of Hasan's laptop that they couldn't get through the entire military intelligence apparatus that they're already doing with spying, intercepting communications? Why do you think they're subpoenaing specifically Hasan and Code Pink? And why do you think these people are the ones being highlighted by Fox News, which, by the way, happened before Hasan or Code Pink have confirmed they even got a subpoena? So this is a sensationalized article to try to get ahead of something that might not have even happened yet. Maybe it's going to happen, or maybe it never will happen, but let's just say it will. This is meant to drum up hey, look at these left-wing people sentiment, clearly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things that we're talking about here is, like, is this politically targeted? And it reminds me about conversations when people talk about terrorism. Oh, well, it's such a political thing about what is terrorism and what isn't terrorism. Well, terrorism by definition is political. So of course it's political.
Yes,
so
this is, thank you. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but like this idea that anything partisan is bad, like, dude, it's politics. Of course, these are going to be politically influenced decisions. And like, it's not like you have to accept all the excesses of everything related to partisanship, right? You don't have to say it's all good, but you also don't have to say it's all bad. And this is probably an example of good political partisanship. Now, again, it doesn't mean the Trump administration is doing this in good faith or whatever, but again, the facts are the facts, and our legal system seems to, work better than not. So, yes, it is politically motivated, but that's all politics, of course.
Dialogue about like, oh, well, the only reason they're targeting Hasan is because he went to Cuba, because there's a huge military confrontation with Cuba right now. And it's like, yeah, that's how things work. When you
no, wait, hold on. That's not what I'm alleging. I'm alleging they're going after Hasan because he's a left-wing streamer, not because he went to Cuba, right? Nick Shirley went to Cuba. He went to a sanctioned hotel, and they're not subpoenaing him, to my knowledge.
For sure. And I think it's very clear that they are not going after Nick Shirley because Nick Shirley is friendly to the regime.
Yes, and that's an issue, and this guy's not going to disagree with that.
But they are not going after Hasan just because he's left-wing, because if they were, they'd be going after every single major...
Yes, they're not. And again, they've had much more varying success. They went after people like Destiny. I know that allegedly J.D. Vance tried to go after Destiny and deplatform him after the Charlie Kirk comments. Like, they're going to go after everyone on the left they can. It just so happens that Hasan is giving them a good reason to do so, a materially good reason to do so.
Left-wing commentator that didn't go to Cuba. They're going after Hasan because he's connected. He's low-hanging fruit. He's connected to Code Pink, who has outrageously
nefarious.
nefarious...
Didn't go to Cuba. That's the whole reason they're able to have this excuse to go after them. They're going after other people that went on the flotilla or the convoy that went to Cuba.
Yeah, they gave him an excuse. Like, I'm sorry, but like, these are not political defenses. They're going after everyone. Yeah, I know they are, but he gave him an excuse. Yeah, he gave him an excuse. Like, that's insane.
And they're using that as an excuse. Obviously, it's not relevant that they went to Cuba, but this is what they're using as the like, oh, and this is why we're allowed to go after you, right? Just like your example with Al Capone, where it's like, well, you did this tax law, now we have an excuse to punish you, to make an example of you, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. I think, I don't understand where the confusion here is. There's sort of like some allegation that something nefarious is going on because people collaborated with the Cuban government and, by definition, with how it works, the Cuban military and intelligence apparatus, to go on a political trip for the purposes of politics, and then they're being investigated upon it. In what world? I mean, honestly, it would be a miscarriage of justice if they weren't investigated for it. And I would apply that over to the turning... I just don't know this guy's name. Brillen?
Nick Shirley? Or no, a different guy?
Or was Nick Shirley the one that went?
Brian Grimm went. I'm pretty sure Code Pink went. I don't know what their name is affiliated. I know Nick Shirley went on a separate trip. Yeah.
Isn't Nick Shirley the one that he was in the hotel and he was like, oh, the Cuban intelligence officers are following me and I have to hold myself up, and he like left early or something?
Maybe. I didn't watch the video. He's the one who's mentally disabled.
Yeah. Well, that's, ever since Charlie Kirk, it's gotten really bad for that crowd. But yeah, no, I mean, and I think that's a really huge difference. I was going to point on that is that I thought it was the Brillen guy. Who's the Charlie Kirk replacement? He's got weird...
Brylan Hollyhand, you're talking
Brylan
about.
Hollyhand. Yeah, I thought it was Brylan Hollyhand, but maybe it was Nick Shirley. But yeah, so whoever that little pipsqueak, conservative pipsqueak was that went, their experience was overwhelmingly different from the Code Pink experience. Their experience was that they had to lock themselves in their hotel, which, by the way, it seemed like it was the sanctioned hotel, so it seems like he violated that as well, and hide there until he could leave. And you want to know the reason why his experience was different? Was because he wasn't on a government-sponsored, military and intelligence-approved propaganda trip. And so,
it doesn't change the fact that Shirley should be prosecuted for any, error that he made in staying in a hotel he shouldn't have. But again, this is an important point. There's a material difference between someone doing hostile journalism in a foreign country that we are, having sanctions against, and one who is taking direction from the government and doing propaganda for them. That's a substantial difference.
I do keep ignoring the fact that this went through OFAC. Like, he had to get all of this trip approved through OFAC. Like, the American government sanctioned this trip. They said this was okay, right?
The American government might have sanctioned parts of this trip. Well, I mean, Hasan said that they did, but we don't know exactly what they said. We don't know.
Yes, exactly. We have no idea what. First of all, we don't know what they were privy to, what communications they were privy to. We have no idea what limitations there were. We have no idea what the general range of acceptable behavior was defined by the government. And we know, too, just because you're given visas, you're authenticated to do something, does not mean you can then just do whatever you want with the visas. That's this is such a stupid comment.
Exactly what was approved and what wasn't approved. For all we know, and this is most likely what happened, by the way, was that they had an agenda. They said on these dates we're going to be at these locations, we're going to be at these venues, and this is where we're going to be staying. They submitted that to some kind of a government authority. They approved it and said, this isn't going to violate sanctions. Congratulations. And that's it. But that has nothing to do with the conversations that were had on the island. That has nothing to do with the people with the networks that they connected to on the island.
Or the content they produced afterwards, which is the really big concern, which is, again, if you're going there and you're getting, special access to things, if there's any risk of the government of Cuba saying, hey, make sure to include these talking points in the video, Not only is it illegal, but people should know about that.
This is the big one. That has absolutely nothing to do with all of the organization and planning that went before they went, that the government probably wasn't privy to when they submitted the request for information, and certainly what happened after. So, I mean, I really don't understand this idea that it's like, oh, well, I mean, like down to every single person that they talked to on the street, the U.S. government sanctioned this trip. That's just not the case. And here's the other thing is that like this really cannot be stated enough. Cuban intelligence is outrageously sophisticated. It is outrageously active. It did not curb its actions after the fall of the Soviet Union. There's this great BBC article I have with an interview with a CIA agent that focused primarily on counterintelligence. And through much of their career, they focused on Cuba's DGI, which is their intelligence agency. And they say very clearly, actually, the Cuban intelligence apparatus is significantly more robust than the KGB ever was. It's significantly more robust than the Russian SVR, which is the spiritual successor of the KGB. And so the idea that we're going to have this Cuban government-approved, certainly, political program on the island, and that the Cuban intelligence wouldn't get involved at all is strange. The main question is, how involved did they get? Like, was the extent of their involvement a cold approach on a couple of non-important, non-celebrity members there? Perhaps. Was there also an effort to establish a political program with the various political entities in that cohort? Most likely. And so it's worth exploring.
Okay. So my question is this. You're under the assumption that there could have been some sort of collusion with the Cuban government that was not sanctioned by the American government. They want to investigate that to see if some sanctions were broken. The extent to which that would be harmful to the American project is very questionable to me, like what Hasan or Code Pink could have done that would so greatly subvert American interest. I'm not quite sure, but maybe you can explain that. But regardless, why then are they not subpoenaing specifically the organizers of this convoy? Why are they not subpoenaing every...
Aren't they? I thought they also announced that Code Pink and like proper people involved in the leadership were getting subpoenaed as well, including the actual organization. I'm pretty sure that was like along with Hasan.
Single person that went on this convoy? Or why are they singling out two of the biggest names in left-wing media that are consistently opposed to their political project?
Sure, yeah.
Because these two big figures also seem to do propaganda for the government afterwards. Hasan made a video with Al Jazeera that was posted on YouTube under Al Jazeera plus his Twitter YouTube account. Like, that's substantially different from even a lot of the people who just went and may have also been taking direction, because there's something that is not evidence of necessary malfeasance, but evidence that there's a high chance that there was some form of direction being taken.
Well, I think almost all of the attendees on that trip are people that fit into Hasan's headspace. I don't think there's like a lot, I could be wrong, but I believe that there are, let's just say, many other people on that trip that fit into Hasan's worldview and stuff. Like there's this like a female tanky girl that was on the trip, and there's like this female comedian that's like pretty left-wing that was on the trip. There's certainly several other people. And so I think we should start, number one, with the idea that we don't know who all got the subpoenas. Perhaps the only salacious people that got subpoenas were Hasan Piker and Code Pink, and perhaps it actually goes farther than that. But I mean, my honest read on the situation is, once again, Hasan's read on the situation. I think because of Hasan's size, because of his connections, because of his how many like large, widespread political connections and political collaborations he is probably involved with a lot of these different tentacles from this Code Pink backer that they're interested in. And I think it really is quite as simple as Hasan's read on it, is that they're fundamentally most interested in the in what is it? I think his name is Singham, the one of the large financial backers behind Code Pink. Code Pink does significantly more sketchy stuff than Hasan Piker ever does. I mean, my own statement.
Yes, Code Pink's extremely suspect and should have been. I mean, again, this is part of the reason why the Trump administration actually is horrifically incompetent. Back to the conversation I was having about partisanship, like, you can say certain actions by the DOJ and any administration will be political, but like that's good. Like, you do want really efficient and highly politicized, movements for things that matter. So an example being, like, Code Pink should have been heavily investigated by Trump v1, 1000%. It wasn't, for a variety of reasons, probably partially because you had so many people who were following norms at the time, probably because it flew under the radar for a lot of those people, probably because Trump is so stupid that he wouldn't even think about it. But like, that's an example of something that you want to be combed over, like, because that is spooky. And then conversely, I think you want Turning Point investigated by Democrats. You want CPAC investigated by Democrats. You want to see all that Hungarian money. You want to see if everything's above board. Like that, these are all things that should happen. And that is supposed to be what happens in America to an extent. We are a country that, really prohibits anything but a two-party system, which is meant to be dialectical in practice. But the problem is we've gotten lazy. We are lazy with these things. So yeah, like Code Pink's a huge issue, and it's good to be partisan about that. There's a
on this was
benefit.
that I didn't think Hasan should even be scrutinized for the trip. I thought maybe he should be scrutinized for the China trip, but that this is most likely related to Code Pink's connections. And then lo and behold, because Hasan apparently doesn't speak to lawyers, he's on stream every night talking about all the different sketchy political organizations connected to this trip. So yeah, I think that was probably the entire intent.
Okay.
Hey, wait. So can I ask a question on what
Real
we
quick,
actually agree
then
on?
I got to get to super chats and I have a question for each of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, my question is, do we agree that Hasan, or maybe Code Pink, but definitely Hasan, should not be punished at all for this? That like just requesting some information from him is completely the limits to which this administration should be going?
I definitely, but yes, I completely agree with that. In fact,
Okay.
and this is, to add a little bit of levity here, one of the things that I consistently joke with people about people like Jackson Hinkle, who are like behind enemy lines with the Houthis and deep into the Russians, is I'm like, guess what? The CIA probably compromised that kid like 2.5 years ago. So like the likelihood that this kid is ever going to go to prison for any of this stuff, if it ever reached a point in which he was going to reach that place, they would take him once he came back home, they threaten him with 30 years in prison and say, you're going to cooperate with us or your life is over. And guess what? So no, I don't think that I don't think there is a world in which Hasan Piker will certainly face criminal. I don't even think he'll face the civil penalties, and I don't think that he should either. I think the best thing that the United States could hope from something like this is just getting information out of Hasan about what happened.
Okay.
And then the second question that we agree on is the reason he's being singled
Also,
out.
I'd agree with that, actually. I think it's much better than Hasan himself facing criminal actions. Well, actually, I don't know. I'd think about that more. That's kind of iffy because, like, is it good to have, him as like a whisperer that can help take on bigger organizations? Like, perhaps. But I'm also concerned just about, like, the idea that, like, why is it that we're so okay with our biggest media figures being these compromised individuals? Like, their audience isn't picking up on it, but the propaganda does seep through. It does change people's opinions. So I understand what this guy is saying, but no, I think making people like Hasan actual sacrifices, in the sense that they need people who are examples that can scare other streamers and other media, alt media people from engaging with this stuff, because unlike normal journalists or pundits, they don't have the same level of fear associated with violating what otherwise would be seen as extremely risky or completely unacceptable in a traditional media environment. Like, I think that should be something that maybe we do have some examples to point to of criminal convictions, because if you don't have that, no one will be afraid and the problem will just perpetuate.
Out from anyone else on this convoy is just because of how big he is, right?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is what does it mean that he's big? It's big that he has a lot of information. He has a lot of connections. So no, I don't think it has to do with his influence. I do think that it goes hand in hand with the fact that he knows so many people. He has access to so many people. He has been privy to so many conversations. Well, sure, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Wick.
Sure. Okay. $5 from It's Vishy. Thank you for the $5. I'm uncommitted on how I feel about this issue. I think Hasan and his side need to earn my vote. It's not on me to appease them. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Bad Horse. This is for the Wick TV Yummy Ramen Fund. Well, appreciate that. $2. Yeah. We're gonna get it. Okay. $10 from Real Determinatus. The short answer is no. The long answer is maybe. If he genuinely can show contrition and willingness to back the Democrats, no matter how much of a corporate neoliberal Zionist they are. Thank you for the $10.
It's so fucking stupid. Who cares? He could be a literal neo-Nazi. I'd be saying the same argument. Like, I don't care how anti-American they are. You shouldn't be punished and singled out by the American government for trying to do something that I think is completely legitimate, which is deliver aid to a country that's being, embargoed.
Oh my God. Like, again, like the idea of this is a aid trip, bro. He was there to do journalism at best and was really just there to do like propaganda punditry for foreign sources. That's crazy, dude.
To the point of starvation, like whatever. This is so silly.
I guess that brings me to my first question for you, Soypill, is a subpoena a punishment? If what Bishop is saying,
a subpoena in and of itself is not a punishment. You're looking at it in the context of why the government is doing it, how this is being made into a story, and whether or not this has a chilling effect on people that are trying to do similar things, which is, hey, the government's going to start looking into you if you do anything like this, instead of, hey, if they just said, look, we have some general concerns about what might have happened. These people are not in trouble. In fact, they are more than welcome to do this anytime they want. We just want to make sure that nothing, collusion went and happened. Like, even then, it might have some sort of chilling effect, but you can see the way this is being implemented is going after these people, and that's what I have an issue with. It's not just, we're just asking for information. It's, why is the government, the Trump government, looking into me and my, doings where this was just some mission to deliver some food aid? Oh, it's because they want to appear as if they're cracking down on the crazy radical commie left. That's why I think this is happening.
$5 from True Striker. Soypill. Why do you assume there's no possible way he broke a law? There's some smoke.
I didn't say that.
Maybe there's fire. There hasn't been an investigation yet.
I think there's a fair good chance that he broke the law, right? I think you violate sanctions if you give money to unapproved Cuban businesses. So if you bought
Yep. that's, again, though, this is why people have to be so careful.
a fucking like sandwich from the wrong vendor. That might technically be breaking the law. What I think didn't happen is some crazy extrajudicial collusion that subverted American interest. Instead of, oh, this guy might have like gave some money to a business that wasn't approved. Who fucking cares? In the same way, who cares if someone with 55 in a 50 zone? But they're using that, like the Al Capone thing, to crack down on these sorts of people. That's what I have an issue with. Not, hey, maybe he did break the law, but I don't think that law is something that is enforced. There's a disparity by which it's enforced. Clearly, with the Nick Shirley thing, it's pretty irrelevant to me.
Sure. $10. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the biggest problems in the way that we're even trying to discuss this is that there's like, let's just say, a completely intentional, inaccurate way of describing what was going on there. Hasan Piker did not go to Cuba to deliver aid. Hasan Piker went to provide a show for his platform.
Yes, thank you. And more importantly, like, that's okay. Like, you can like have that, like, it's a defensible opinion in the abstract, but the idea of like, this is the thing that always creeps me out about the far left people, is that like, at least in the right, you have like, the lies are either like really stupid, or they'll just tell you straight up like, yeah, I did that, or whatever, or this is what I'm doing. But like, it's so interesting how like for Hasan, it can't be, I went in here to do punditry because I think it's important for the American people to learn why it's important to rebel against, or not rebel, but to get rid of the sanctions in Cuba and to see the harm we're doing, blah, blah, blah. But to frame it like it was an aid trip, like, bro, that's just crazy. Like, dollar to dollar for how much they spent to get there. Like, I wonder how much aid even like came through. Like, I would assume, honestly, I could guess that if Hasan did an aid drive for Cuba on stream for humanitarian sources that were legit, he could probably cover all of the aid that they brought in that entire flotilla. Which, by the way, it wasn't flotilla, they also flew over, so God knows what he even brought with them. I'm sure he could cover the entire material element to that, whatever aid was brought there, in probably like 4 hours on a stream doing an aid drive. So it's ridiculous.
Political by nature. If it was just about aid, it would have been done entirely different. He wouldn't have spent the entire time talking about the political nature between the United States and Cuba's relationship. He would.
This too, by the way, and you can see this, like BBC and such will do organizational work with nonprofits to demonstrate like a humanitarian crisis in a place like Cuba, even if it's oppositional to the Western governments. Like that, but the important thing is they will very, very carefully avoid a lot of political topics because it won't be framed as politics or activist politics. It'll be seen as genuine humanitarian activism, which itself, there's a line between what is that and what is, not that. But look, I think that's really, I think that's very important to make the distinction.
Just talked about aid and all of those things, and he would have intentionally kept it apolitical.
How can you keep delivering aid apolitical? The aid needs to happen because of politics. That's a ridiculous statement. There's no such thing as apolitical.
Again, it's probably a turn of the phrase. Apolitical aid is like when so an example being like in Gaza, the Catholic Church is extremely vocal about a humanitarian mission to recover and help Gaza and to stop violence, whatever. But they're not giving political prescriptions, right? They're not telling you that you have to lay down your arms and just let Hamas, run wild. They try to do it in as apolitical a fashion as possible because they understand the realities of war. That is a distinction that Bishop is talking about here.
Political aid. Why does the aid need to be delivered? Because of political
hold on.
sanctions
well, let me ask you this.
For 60 years.
Do you think that there's a difference between me, like if I find out someone needs a little help and I DM them like, hey buddy, I heard you're having a tough time. Here's a hundo, right? I'm gonna give that to you. Do you think there's a difference between that and then finding out someone needs help and then bringing them on my show and making a huge production out of, I know that, buddy, I know that you've been going through all this, and don't forget to like and subscribe, gang, right? And look at how generous I'm going to be with my my meager means in giving this poor gentleman $100 out of my wallet, right? You see the difference between these two things?
But first of all, I think that Hasan probably lost money compared to just doing a normal stream when he was here. So I don't think this was so that he could make more money. I think he's trying to bring attention.
That is not the same thing. It's you're talking about opportunity cost loss. That's not the same thing at all.
It's something that he cares about. And the idea that like, oh, it's bad for you to investigate and talk to your millions of people audience as to why this is happening, why I need to go deliver aid, why my buddy needs $100 is completely relevant. Like, why would this not be something that you talk about? Like, guys, I don't want to make this political. I just have to give aid to Cuba, but I'm not going to tell you why. I'm just going to go do it. Like, that's fucking ridiculous.
Okay. $10 from Real Determinatus, and then I got a couple questions for Bishop when he gets his stuff back together. $10 from Real Determinatus. Soy Pill. Hasan advocates for exactly what's happening to him when it happens to liberals. He doesn't get to demand liberal support when he spends his life trying to subvert and supplant liberalism.
I will say that's a kind of I always find those arguments kind of stupid. I think they make sense, but I always think that politics should be a little more sophisticated than just, well, look what he did when the shoe was on the other foot. Like, it's not sophisticated. The reason why this is not, you shouldn't defend this, or sorry, you shouldn't attack the administration and defend Hasan on this blatantly, is because there's a political reason, there's a gain for it in terms of the long-term health of the United States, as well as being in line with liberal values. Again, Hasan will play the freedom of speech game, he'll play the whatever game, but he doesn't believe in any of that. So it's not about, oh, he will laugh at this when it's on the other foot, or his enemies are subjected to something similar. The problem is that Hasan doesn't believe in the very principles that he's trying to hide behind when the government comes for him or whatever. That's like the better point, I think, than just this like weird eye for an eye thing.
Yeah, like I said, Hasan's a huge hypocrite. You can watch him talk about, oh man, I hope they lock up Adam Schiff. You can say it's a joke. I don't really care if it's a joke. I think enough people in his audience don't think it's a joke. Maybe he would say like, oh good, the American government's going after Nick Shirley if like Obama had done this, right? I don't care. I don't care if he's unprincipled. I don't care if he's a hypocrite. Why should I change my principles because I don't want to see this happen to anyone? And if you're going to change your principles because this guy slighted you, then you're a little bitch. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you were, sorry, my computer crashed when you were asking how could you deliver aid in a non-political way. And I would say almost the entire world of giving aid is non-political. When you look at organizations like Red Cross and various UN programs, almost all of them—
Again, I just be careful with this wordings. I know what Bishop is saying, and I agree with it implicitly, but you just like, because this guy's going to get you in the war game. You can see the like fucking weird-ass little smile he has with this. Sorry, that was kind of rude. Maybe he just has that smile normally. It's always political in some respect. It's about making it as apolitical as possible. It's about making it as humanitarian as possible. But like, we have to remember, a humanitarian angle is itself a political disposition. Like it just is. And you have to, for example, being, I think for Catholics as an example, you need to have a political ideology which incorporates the Catholic universalist humanitarianism, because that's just critical to being able to live a political life that is in, directionally related to your ethics, your morality. But that doesn't mean that every humanitarian action you do is maximally political, or even political to a noticeable extent. So this is like it's a very hard to deliver on point, because depending on who you're talking to, they won't just accept what is clear about that, and they'll play these weird word games. Let's see if Soypill does that. I hope he doesn't, because he should know what this guy is saying.
Rules and regulations. I mean, you can't even join the Peace Corps if you've ever worked in American intelligence, period. Just because your very presence in their organization would undo the whole operation. So the idea that—
I didn't know. That's interesting. That's a very good fact to have.
There's only one way to do it, and it's a big political program that stands at
I'm
odds
not
with
saying
the entire—
you can deliver aid.
Let Bishop finish. Let Bishop finish. Go ahead.
I'm cutting the chase. I'm agreeing with you. But, okay.
So number one, the idea that it's somehow ridiculous that he made it political because it's all political it just stands at odds with the entire world of giving aid. And number two, if you agree with the fact that it was political, then we can start from that point and start analyzing it from a political project that was approved by the Cuban government, and then say—
So, but this is a much more. I'm glad that he got there, even though he didn't use perhaps the more careful and gentle terms to describe this. This is what is at play. Absolutely, that is it. Which is that if it's a humanitarian mission, you analyze it from that, and part of that analysis is explaining how it is minimally political and it's maximally humanitarian. But if the humanitarian component is just an element, or in this case, I feel like it's almost like a Trojan horse for the actual politics, then that's a completely different argument. And everyone intuitively knows this. We would never be playing this game with people on the right. Like, this is just ridiculous.
Was it that big of a deal or not? Which I think you could make a very real argument, especially when you look at how the Cuban government is positioned. I think there's a really good argument that I happen to disagree with, that it was a pretty feckless a political project that might have even only took place with certain parts of the Cuban government that have to do with places like diplomacy and things like that, as opposed to more aggressive and problematic parts of the Cuban government. I think all that is very realistic and very possible, but it is at least that. It is not just, oh, he's just a little employee of the Red Cross and this is all about going after the doctors. It's not that.
Okay, so to be clear, obviously, you can not talk about politics when you deliver aid, but delivering that aid is always going to be political because there's a political reason why that aid is necessary. There's a sanction on the government from a different government. Now, that aid could theoretically say, look, we don't really have any statement as to why these sanctions are in place. We just care about human lives. This is totally possible. I'm aware that you could avoid talking about that conversation or having that conversation when you deliver this aid, and Hasan could have done this. But if a political streamer who opposes these sanctions is going to go deliver aid, there's no reason for him to just deliver the aid. I think this is ridiculous to say, oh, yeah, no, like he should just let the Red Cross go. But yeah, the reason he went is to bring attention to something that he politically disagrees with, which is, hey, these humanitarian aids are necessary because of these stupid fucking sanctions. That was his opinion, right? So if you want to say, okay, yeah, he could have done this apolitically, yeah, so yeah, that's what the Red Cross does to a degree. Sometimes US aid was doing this, where it's like, hey, we're not really introducing American politics, but it was a effort of soft power, right? They're not telling you how to think,
I didn't
but
mention
no matter. Okay, well, I'm mentioning US aid. It's not.
Yeah. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Right. So the point is, yes, of course, you could technically not talk about politics, but the reason that these people go on this is to spread a message. But like, so what? Like, this aid is going to be political regardless. You're opposing a sanction. You're directly trying to undermine what that sanction is doing. It is political.
Okay, Bishop, I have a couple questions for you.
Let's go.
Sure. So it does not. One of the things you mentioned earlier is that we should view judicial actions by the Trump administration with some level of skepticism, and they should be kind of gone over a little bit with more scrutiny than we would from a more legitimate administration. Does not the fact that they have selectively, at least is what it appears, selectively issued these subpoenas give evidence and credence to the fact that they aren't actually after any sort of truth claim here, that this is, again, as Soypil said when they put it on Fox News, that this is merely the Trump's administration's version of a basically making a big show of it in order to achieve their political ends. So they're not after justice. They're not after protecting our interests. They're making a show of it in order to hurt their political enemies. Does that not follow?
A little bit, but it brings you to the question: when you listen to what's going on, when you listen to what they're interested in and who they're subpoenaing, what the fuck does Nick Shirley know about Code Pink's financial backers? What does Nick Shirley know about this billionaire that lives in China that is financing all of these influence operations? What does Nick Shirley know about that? I mean, maybe Nick Shirley knows a lot about it, and therefore it is an injustice that he wasn't subpoenaed for this issue. But I don't think that's the case. So when we talk about, is it selective? Yeah, it's selective. I don't think Nick Shirley was involved. I don't think he had the permissions. I don't think he had the access. I don't think he had the information that this organization had, and I don't think it's what they're interested in. I mean, to add to it, like on the flip side, I think that what we could meaningfully see on the other end of things, which, by the way, we didn't see under Biden because liberals take this stuff a hell of a lot seriously than the ass clowns that we have in office right now, is we saw all of these big social media influencers. It turns out that they were connected to Russia, and it turns out that they were very deeply connected to a Russian influence operation. And instead of subpoenaing all of them, the Biden administration had the nerve, by the way, I'm criticizing this, had the nerve to say that they were victims, and they were caught in explicit lies where they were trying to communicate with these financial sources on Moscow time. And then they turn around and say, oh, I was trying to talk to him on Moscow time, but I didn't know he was Russian. The point of this,
to be clear, didn't the Trump administration throw this case out once they got into office?
Yes,
it's utterly ridiculous. Administration they were investigating the Tenet Media employees, right?
I'm blaming the Biden administration for not taking it as seriously as the Trump administration is apparently taking this situation in Cuba. And by the way, I think the Biden administration should have taken it a whole hell of a lot more seriously than this situation that we have in Cuba right now. But my point is, I'm drawing moral equivalence, and I am also pointing out the fact that the different political parties are handling them wildly differently. I think they're all very serious.
General Grievous for $5. With much love to Soypil, this mission had no major impact like the Gaza flotilla. It was optics, and it did more harm stealing power for his hotel.
Stealing power for his hotel. I'm not quite sure about that, but didn't they deliver 20 tons of aid? Was that all just burned? I have no idea the extent to which that's at all valid. I don't think so, but maybe.
Okay, Bishop, one more question for you then. Given the fact that they are taking it, so I guess if the subpoena comes out and they question Hasan Piker, at what point would you consider it illegitimate, right? Like, so obviously you don't consider necessarily, on the face of it, subpoenaing Hasan Piker to be an illegitimate use of our judicial system or of our investigative time. What would make it so in your mind? Like, what would they need to do? Sure. What steps would they need to take to be like, okay, this is too much, they're going too far, this is obviously just a political attack?
Yeah, I think, to tell you the truth, I find it so hard to believe that something like that is even possible, even if it was something that they wanted to do. Because
hold on. Just to be clear, you find it so hard and impossible to believe that the Trump administration would use the judicial system in order to target their political enemies without care for the law?
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, I don't think a very entertaining answer is if they murdered somebody and put the person's foot in Hasan's gym bag and then framed him for murder, that would be wrong. Like, yes, if they specifically trumped up something that he clearly didn't do and then charged him and like punished him for something that he clearly didn't do, that would be wrong. But I think that the realistic version that we would be trying to parse out would look a lot more gray than that.
One of the problems.
Wait. Let me ask then. Let's look at the stuff they have done. Do you think them going after Letitia James was legitimate, or do you think that was a trumped up charge?
Sorry, what was the charge?
Like when they go after some of these like political opponents, and it's for like mortgage fraud. And it might actually be
Yeah.
actual mortgage fraud. Don't get me wrong. I bet if you look into
Yeah.
this, there might be some I that they didn't dot or some T they didn't cross, right?
Yeah.
But do you think these are legitimate reasons to go after and try to prosecute them with the DOJ?
Again, like the problem is these are not material comparisons. This is why I think the soy pill is like there has to be some like maliciousness from him in this, because people have an issue with the mortgage fraud claims because it's the Trump admin trying to disenfranchise people they don't like, usually in government, using external legal claims. What's happening here is that Hasan Piker likely did something not above board, or at least presumably could have, in regards to foreign propaganda, and is now being investigated for that. He's being investigated on the material basis. If you don't, it's still politicization, obviously, but if you don't like that, you should compare it to a form of politicization that is directly tied to what you're referring to on the other side. But you're not. You're comparing it to something that's totally different.
Do I think that there are legitimate reasons to prosecute them with the DOJ?
Yeah.
The short answer, I mean, do I think it's legitimate for them to go after? Yes. Do I think that it's more political than anything else? Yeah, obviously.
Why is it legitimate?
And do I think that the fact that it's political?
Wait. Why is it legitimate?
Let me get this out. And the reason why it is, do I think that the fact that it is clearly political is more important than the fact that it might be justified because they actually broke the law? Yes, I do think it is more important. For example, whenever they arrest a politician for corruption, the question is, well, why the fuck are they arresting him for corruption? Because they're all corrupt. They're all doing this stuff. They're all getting away with it. So why is this specific person being targeted? And so I think that's the question. So your question is, why do I think that it's legitimate? I think it's legitimate because we have an endemic of people in positions of power and authority not being held responsible for the crimes that they commit. And it's utterly ridiculous. And anybody who peers the curtain back and starts looking at what the actual history of these people are, and you could throw a dart at any of them, and whoever it hits, they're going to have some skeletons in their closet. And I think that we overwhelmingly turn a blind eye at it because that's what power does.
Okay, but then you do think it's legitimate to go after Letitia James for mortgage fraud because they're an opponent to the administration, or not? Because apparently all politicians are corrupt. So as long as they find something that's worth going after and technically breaks the law, they should do it, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so the short answer is no. The long answer is when is enough enough? And when are we in a position in which our government can say enough is enough? And I feel like ideally...
Well, I think we're not when you have to drum up charges that clearly get thrown out by a bunch of different judicial systems because they're so clearly illegitimate, and you're just doing it because these people oppose your political project. That no, not every politician is so corrupt that you can just find anything. Oh, you can indict a ham sandwich, so it's okay. No, there's clearly things that people do that are against certain processes. But this idea that everyone is so evil...
Again, this argument makes a lot of sense when you're not talking about fishing expeditions or otherwise that are not materially sound, in the sense that the legalization of the justice system is not for the thing that is being accused of, but rather something exterior, but they're then trying to use one of these, one of these kind of like vague laws to attack. That is not what's happening here.
As long as you want to, you can definitely get a real, legitimate corruption charge on every single politician. It's just not true. There are people that are way worse and doing way more corrupt things that are so far beyond the pale of what we're used to, like Trump taking billions of dollars and using it to bail out January 6ers, right? That's so much more corrupt than Letitia James maybe filed a mortgage.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a question then, Soybill, right? Say the subpoena happens. Is there any amount of information that could come out of the subpoena would you change your mind on this, where you would be like,
yeah, of course. If it turned out there was a credible whistleblower that came out from the convoy and was like, Hasan Piker was selling state secrets to Cuba, like whether or not you agree with what we're doing with the Cuban embargo, if he's unironically like using subverting American intelligence agencies like to a significant degree, if he's making sure that they can like do some back channel like embargo like millions of dollars worth of trade, yeah, sure. If that's what you really think happened, I think that's insane. But if it did, that could be the case. I don't think it is. And if it was, I would say, okay, well, maybe this is like starting to get way beyond what we think is some sort of he just wanted to deliver aid or bring attention to this. It was like, okay, holy shit, he's acting as like a foreign agent. He's violating the FARA. Yeah, but I don't think that's the case here. So yeah, there is a limit, of course.
So see, and I think that's fundamentally where you and I stand on a different stance. Is I feel like your perspective, and feel free to correct me. I feel like your perspective is that whatever potential, whether it be zero or a lot, whatever potential collaboration that Hasan has about his political programming in coordination with the Cuban government, it just isn't very important. And from my perspective, I think that it's like extremely important for us to.
It's a very important thing, but it's also very important to make sure that it is all above board. Like this is like, it should be common practice with pundits who are doing, especially in alt media, where there's so little oversight institutionally. There absolutely should be checks into this all the time. Yes, is it partisan right now? Absolutely. But we should normalize this because we should know, are people getting direction? Are they getting money? Are they violating the laws? That's important. And it's especially important with a country that is as sanctioned as Cuba. If they're not respecting it there, who knows what they're doing with countries that aren't sanctioned?
understand exactly how specifically nation-state actors are influencing the political programming within our society. I think that's true. I think that's like a million more times true for people that we're potentially getting ready to go into military conflict with.
Can you lay out the hypothetical that you think might be happening here that's influencing Hasan Piker in the United States? This specifically happened on this convoy and not through literally any other means of communication?
Yeah, I think Swan Marcus broke it down in a really plausible and reasonable way. I think that there is a very strong possibility that one of Hasan Piker's political confidants works with or for the Cuban intelligence apparatus, whether they are employed directly as a Cuban James Bond. Most likely not. They are probably receiving tasking from a Cuban intelligence.
Or again, it could just be simply that Code Pink has contacts they shouldn't have, that Hasan is now being Hasan communicates with, who are middlemen for the Cuban government. Which again, in this case, it's even more legitimate because we don't just want to know about Hasan. We want to know about these organizations like Code Pink. Are they doing subversive, illegal propaganda? That should be something that we have insight into as Americans. It's not charges, it's just investigations.
Officer who essentially organizes that tasking through that individual that is a political confidant of Hasan and collaborates with Hasan in how to work that into what Hasan says about Cuba. And furthermore, the fact that it is very likely that Hasan recently hired a PR firm to address whether or not he should be integrated into the Democratic Party more puts him very deeply involved in American politics. And I think the idea that we don't even need to investigate, like that's not even, we're not even allowed to have a curiosity about that. The fact that he was there in person and was able to collaborate with them a lot more extensively? What do you mean?
Well, you can investigate his connections to all of these things without specifically going after his
hold on, but
right?
just to translate, what he's saying is that he went there directly so they could talk in person, so we could not monitor communications in the normal ways we would monitor those communications. So we subpoena him to figure out if when he was there in person, they had any conversations or he made any connections that we could not track with our normal intelligence apparatus. That's, I think, what he's saying. Is that a correct kind of?
Yeah, I mean, all Hasan would have to do is sit down at a bar next to his friend who works as a doctor in the Cuban medical apparatus and just have a conversation at a bar about how to...
You don't think he could do that in America?
Well, are you saying that we should just have unrestrained...
No, I'm just saying.
Well, hold on. Would it be
exact
easier
same
or harder to
conversation could happen
track
at a
it?
bar in America. The idea that this entire thing.
But just to be clear, he can't really do that in America. That's the whole point about these sanctioned countries. A Cuban doctor who is an employee of the state of Cuba can't come here. You actually could not have that conversation. And also, by the way, a lot of these laws are covered by state of mind, as in you could have that conversation in America and not know, and it's fine. The issue is when you start to know. That's the whole problem. If you're intentionally communicating with government actors, taking direction, that's the problem.
So we could have a secret conversation with the Cuban government that would otherwise be monitored in an American bar. Like, this is like this crazy James Bond story we're drawing up here. That is like, this is why he needs to be investigated.
Hold on, this isn't crazy. This happens all the time.
This is how it works.
Yeah, this is how it works. Like, hold on. You're making it out like, hold on, stop. You're making it out as if this is some like wild conspiracy that's out there. No, look, I worked in military intelligence. This happens constantly, all the time.
True.
Like this isn't even abnormal.
And people in the defense industry do get in trouble for it. If you want to go up and look up stories about this, there are some every single year.
That this is why we need to investigate the flotilla and not, hey, this is what, first of all, I don't think this is why we should go after Hasan, but this would seem to be justification to investigate this guy in everything he does, right? Every conversation he has with everyone, at every restaurant, at every bar. Why is it that somehow he would only be able to get this information or have this information conveyed to him in Cuba after doing this flotilla mission? And if it was that fucking secret, why wouldn't he just go to Cuba and not broadcast it? Like this is this like weird, insane, like, trumped up spy story to me. This seems really ridiculous.
See, this is, I mean, once again.
I mean, you're talking about like a situation where there's no good reason to have suspicion, right? There's no material suspicion. There's just ideological suspicion. Like, oh, this person's a Marxist. Of course they talk to other Marxists. Maybe they talk to state people, whatever. But when you take that kind of a person and then you put them in the context where they're openly in public admitting to colluding with Cuban government officials through middlemen, and then also they're producing propaganda media with the largest foreign media apparatuses like Al Jazeera, then yeah, you have a very good reason to investigate that. It becomes very different.
I think that this just speaks to the fact that you really just don't understand how this stuff works. And
okay,
as Wick is saying, the likelihood that this didn't happen is certainly below 50%. Like,
okay.
No, I mean, so let me get this straight. So your position is that during Hasan's time in Cuba, between all of between any times he spent in bars or at parties or in conversations around a table with a coffee and a sandwich, you're telling me that you think it is most likely that he didn't talk to anyone connected to the Cuban military?
No, he might have.
I mean, well, I don't think he might have. I think the likelihood that didn't happen is almost 0%. I think it's almost 0%.
And do you think it's in America's interest to find out maybe what he communicated with about them?
Which,
like,
by the way,
no.
the American...
You don't think that's hold on. You don't think it's in our interest to know what influencer who is involving himself and trying to involve himself with American politics had to say to a hostile foreign government?
Not
You don't think
necessarily.
that's in America's interest at all?
It depends on what information you think is being conveyed. And I'm still, again, trying to find out the
programming.
distinction between him doing this in Cuba and getting the exact same information from any other contact that the Cuban has in America.
I'll tell you the difference. I think the difference is that our laws have created a way in which we legally and societally find it a lot more acceptable to investigate things that people do overseas than the things that they do in their backyard. I think that people, because I think that there is something more nefarious about going to a hostile island where we know that there are all these serious problems with the government that's run there and having a political program there, as opposed to getting a drink in your backyard. I think those are two very different things. And I think that is
why, if the same information can be conveyed in both of these places, right? So why is one different?
Well, I mean, the same information can't necessarily be conveyed in different ways. There might be all sorts of sanctions against Cuban individuals. It might be very hard for Cuban intelligence to arrive safely in the United States and arrange a face-to-face with somebody of that profile. I think that there might be people that, I mean, what kind of a question is that? I mean, we have outrageously serious filters for people that live in Cuba trying to get to the United States and vice versa. Like, of course, it's going to be easier for him to have access.
Did not Trump literally reinstated like wet foot, dry foot. You get here, you're a citizen immediately. First of all, so if you just get on the fucking boat and step in Florida, bam, you're an American citizen. Go talk to Hasan now. But also, what he can't just signal like the intelligence community.
What would be the value?
Someone in America and be like, all right, there you go. There's information that was conveyed to you. But he had to go all the way to Cuba to get this in a bar.
Yes, because a lot of Cuban officials, if they were to come to the States, or first of all, let me just tell you this. Hold on, just listen, please. If one of these Cuban military officials or government officials, if they're communicating electronically, we got that. We're going to track it. There's ways we can find out what's being said, how they're saying it, who they're saying it to. We can listen in on their conversations. We got that, okay? In a very real way.
So
hold on. Let me finish.
I'm questioning. I'm just to clarify.
In that respect, it's entirely, again, a question of distinction. Are we going to go out of our way to target these people? Are we going to go out of our way to see to it that these people are monitored appropriately?
Yes. There's no way for them to hide any internet communications.
It's much harder. It's much more difficult. I won't say there's no way, but it's much harder, much more difficult. Even that's why a lot of the important conversations these people have aren't over electronics. It is face-to-face. And it's much easier and safer to arrange a face-to-face meeting in your own backyard, in a place where it is the hostile nation's territory. And I think that it is in America's interest. And
why is it safer?
I want to be clear. I came into this conversation on Hasan's side here, being like, this subpoena seems wildly crazy, like this is way too much. But the argument the Bishop's making here is just true, right? That it's worth asking
all of this
the question.
Is technically possible,
what did you talk about?
But it's not technically possible. It's a question of, is there reasonable suspicion? And yes, we should pursue if so. There's so much blood in the water. Of course you're going to look for sharks. That's just, it's obvious.
Did you talk about with? How long did you have this conversation?
Why is it safer, Wick? Why is it safer
Can I
in
paint
Cuba?
a picture real quick?
Because in America, we have the ability. Okay, that's just how signal intelligence works. We have the ability to track. We have assets in place that can follow these people. If we track who comes into the country, and if they send one of their agents into the country, we know who most of them are. We can track them. We got people following them. We got all these spy shit, right? That's what we do. It's not a movie shit. Like, we have much less ability to do that in hostile territory. We just have less ability to project our intelligence and gathering.
Right. We might not have the ability to record stuff.
Yes.
So what would then subpoenaing Hasan do?
Well, Hasan probably, I would say Hasan is pretty happy with what he has going right now. And he is pretty happy with his own political programs that he has going right now. And if I had to guess, I would bet Hasan doesn't feel the need to get involved with any kind of dirty political programs that he doesn't want to. I mean, he's a millionaire. He's doing very well. It seems like his career is going largely in a positive direction. I would wager it is not in Hasan's interest to become hoodwinked by a hostile intelligence operation. And by the way, I really want to paint a picture for you of just like a person that exists that might really explain to you what Wick and I are trying to say. So this is a person that certainly exists within Cuba, within probably all countries, but certainly Cuba. So there is a man in Cuba that is a doctor, and he has been trained in how to be a medical doctor. And on top of that, he was also trained within what we like to call medical intelligence. And medical intelligence is a specific application of medicine in which you are trained in how to use your position as a caregiver to use that authority over people into getting information out of them. A really good example of this is American Special Forces medics in Afghanistan, where they would be treating local farmers, and while they're treating their twisted ankle, they'd start saying, oh yeah, have you had the Taliban go through your backyard? And typically the farmer would say, fuck no, I'm not telling you anything, they'll cut my head off. But because they're at a very weak position and they're being treated by somebody, they're going to be psychologically pressured into answering those questions. And so that man, as a doctor, he exists in Cuba, and he's been highly trained on this. He knows how to do it. It's his entire job, and there's many of these guys, and a lot of them are on head charts. They're on little documents and little files, and on those head charts, they are in sanctions lists. And when they fly to the United States of America, either one, they're denied entry because they're official intelligence officers, or two, when they arrive in the country, they immediately fall under surveillance. And so
and I'm sorry, can we land the plane? And so we were scared of Hasan learning secret ankle twisting techniques to get out of Americans. What is the issue?
See, once again, I don't think that you're even trying to like honestly engage with the nature.
I have no idea where you're going with this point. I'm getting distracted.
Well, you're like really concerned about like why on earth would spies be more active in their homeland as opposed to the hostile territory of the United States? Yeah, that's the problem.
I'm saying, what information could you possibly be giving to Hasan Piker in Cuba that he couldn't get in America? Not, of course, it's easier to have these.
The entire problem is it didn't happen in America. Like, that's the issue. That's the suspicion part. I don't know what he's not understanding. Like, this is why I really do think that Soy Pill is like a bad actor. He's not a dumb guy. Like, he plays dumb like crazy though. Like, there's no way you don't understand the fundamental difference, even though probabilistically you could find that information outside. Like, you could have someone like Hasan do that malfeasant behavior outside or inside the country. It's just the suspicion comes from the circumstance.
Political programming.
I mean, very specific,
like a pro-Cuba narrative. Do you think he doesn't already have that?
Very specific very specific people to talk to, topics to talk to, and targets to hit at specific times for the purposes of intelligence. I mean, what if they were trying to get information out of him? What if they were trying to get information out of him regarding other programs that he's on? What do you mean, like what? Like what is? What do you think?
Your lack of imagination isn't.
I don't lack imagination, but to be clear, the imagination that we're putting onto this to be like, and this is why. Like, I have this entire James Bond fucking novel of Hasan, who I think everyone here acknowledges is fucking retarded.
There's no James Bond novel. It literally could be as simple as, oh, Code Pink is telling me to talk to this person who's going to give me information from the government so I can do blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know what this weird confusion that Soypil has is. It can, the guy already explained, it can be as simple as him talking to a doctor in a manner that would be illegal. Like, if they discussed politics or discussed messaging. Like,
he's actually also a super spy who has all this important information on American subversion, and we have to have these backroom intelligence information exchanging meetings in Cuban hotels that we have to investigate. And the Trump administration is very, very
like, again, like, it's just, I think what's actually happening here is people like the Soypil just don't think it's that serious. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't speak Spanish, David, but thank you for chatting.
Very concerned in this.
Once again,
by the way,
he might not
Russia
be
doing the same thing because they throw out the 10 media case. It's specifically the Cuban government. Like, this is so ridiculous. Like, how many levels of imagination deep are we right now just to justify? And this is why we're going after this fucking political influencer. This is insane to me. Like, maybe this all happened. Show me one piece of evidence, please.
Well, like, do you have any idea what people spy on each other for? Like, are you clueless? Like, are you stupid? Like, I'm sorry, like, you're using pretty extreme language.
Tell me all about the spy.
Well, I mean, seriously, like, what do you think?
Seriously, tell me about it.
Again, like, it just, the Soypil doesn't think it's because it's on his team. He doesn't think it's bad. He's playing dumb. There's no way he doesn't get it. This guy has tried to patiently explain, this Bishop guy, over and over and over again, explain what he's saying. You know, he's trying to say it can be much more simple when you're thinking. It's not about spies or whatever.
Do you think that, like, I'll tell you, I mean, it's plain and simple. A lot of it is politics. A lot of it is knowing political things about political programs that are going on.
Who's connected to who, who's talking to who, right?
Yeah.
Hasan might just be, he might not even know he's being used, right? He might not even know he's being used. But if, on his subpoena, we ask and we find, like, okay, well, what did they ask you when they were over there? And we find out that they were questioning him about, like, oh, which Democrats have you been talking to? Oh, what have you been talking to them about? Like, this is useful information to U.S. adults.
Yeah, who collaborates with you? Who are other people that we can reach out to for support? I mean, here's a question that I'm curious, and I genuinely mean this. Why do you think the Russians were paying Tim Pool hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode?
Because if enough people are opposed to America granting aid to Ukraine and they vote for people that won't vote for those packages because they watch Tim Pool or any of these other people, then Ukraine won't get aid and Russia will have an easier time winning the war.
So it appears like you're being a little bit more dishonest than you are being stupid, because I know that you can just apply that answer that you understand to the Cuban situation, right?
Yes, exactly.
So Hasan might have had conversations with Cuban officials, and in doing so, they will influence him to be pro-Cuba, which he already is, by the way. So, like, if they're going to subpoena him to wonder if the Cuban government is paying him to have these
No, it's about how he influences other people, as in, people listen to Hasan and they think, oh, this is a normal American who's just speaking his mind. But it changes a lot if Hasan is taking direction from someone. If Hasan is not communicating his authentic opinion and is instead communicating the opinion of the government that is giving him whatever, that changes things substantially. Even if he agreed with all of it beforehand, a viewer knowing that it's a work in collaboration with the Cuban government and not just normal American politics or not just humanitarian work, that substantially changes things. This is the entire problem with our media environments. We have no idea how much of the influence that's in our media is foreign. That is the problem. And this guy perfectly picked it out. He perfectly demonstrated that Soypil understood that when it comes to when it comes to other people, when it comes to people on the right.
Things, which is funny because I mean this guy's just an open Marxist-Leninist, which is what Castro's whole deal was. So
streamer's
the idea
high
that like he's being paid to do it, and
on
not just
with
yeah,
a
this guy kind of
break
already
his
approves of these things. It's a
window
little silly to
law.
me,
His
but
kick
we
is
specifically have to subpoena him
it's a
specifically
bot.
for meeting in this place to find out if this is indeed the way that he's shaping narratives to make other people anti-Cuban embargo, which by the way was a fucking Obama-centrist Democrat position in 2008. So like what is the, like this is all like so deep into the speculation of what could happen.
Again, this is just again like going on like, well, I don't like the new laws, and that's fine, but that's not the question. The question is what's going on. Like it's just I can't tell if he actually I can tell. Sorry, this is like extremely malicious.
And you've drilled down into this very
It's a
specific
simple
scenario
question.
where
Do you think
maybe
it's in
this
the
subpoena
American
might be
interest to
justified,
find out-
where there's a much more obvious thing, which is, hey, the government really doesn't like these fucking people, and they're trying to chill affect them. And okay, maybe there's a justified reason, which, by the way, I already granted that there could be a scenario where this happens, but the level of speculation that you have to go, and you're like, oh, you're so incredulous. No, this could happen, but is that really why this is happening? You really think that there's like some sort of credible whistleblower, some sort of credible evidence that that's what's happening, and that's why we have to go after Zahn? Is that what we're believing?
We're not
right now?
okay.
Like,
To be
can you
clear,
show me like a single, even like remotely
to be
close
clear,
to this,
to be clear,
justifying
a
the subpoena?
subpoena to get information that the U.S. has interest in is not necessarily going after Hasan.
Yes, it's just to basically see, hey, are our suspicions true? Is there something here? Like, and all you need is just a reasonable suspicion. That's all it takes.
It is not necessarily an attack. It could be. I'll grant
do
you
you think
that.
Fox News
I think that
published
there's
this article
evidence
before
that
this
it might
started,
be
Vic?
so, right? But
Wick,
I think that
Wick.
hold on. I think that there is a very good argument that Bishop has made, and now I'm on his side, right? That there is absolutely useful intelligence that we could gather if we suspect, as probably is the case, Cuba is trying to influence our politics, or if, as I think Bishop said earlier, that there is another target that we just want to know from Hasan, what questions did they ask you while you were there? And so that gives
Wick.
us puzzle pieces that we could use to put together to see how they are interacting with other actors.
There's a
financing
scenario
all
where
these
this makes
things.
sense.
All good.
I agree. Do you trust that the Trump administration is doing that in good faith? Because
No,
I just want to find out this.
I do
Okay,
not,
cool.
but I
Hey,
don't.
Wick, if the
Again,
Trump
I don't.
administration came
It's
out right
not
now and said,
out
I'm
of the
subpoenaing
realm of
Wick
possibility.
TV and Dylan Burns because they did something in Ukraine where they talked
Yes,
to people, they have
yes.
connections with the Ukrainian government. Do you think this would be a legitimate subpoena? They're just trying to.
If I went to China and I did a stream and met with Chinese government officials, and I
if
came
changed the
back,
hypothetical to be different from
it
what
would
I
be
just asked,
it would
would you
be
answer my question, please?
expected that they would question me.
Yeah, I think
Ukraine is not a hostile government.
yeah,
Cuba
that's,
is.
that's the problem. There's like a serious understatement of our relationship with Cuba. People talk about Cuba. Oh, it's just Cuba. Like no, like Cuba. They tried to host weapons to genocide us, man. Like they're continuing.
Talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, exactly. The point is like you think this stuff doesn't matter anymore, and it does to the governments. That's I mean like here's like
Why do you think Obama tried to reverse all these things?
because I think Obama was trying to lead things out of the Cold War era. There was that great reset where George W. Bush tried to reset things with Vladimir Putin personally. There's a major attempt to change these things and to bring things to the end. And yes, I do believe that that's the much better way to do it. I believe that the confrontational way that Trump is doing it right now, not only do I think it's bad, not only do I think it's just like a horrible way to go about it, I think the reason he's going about it is because he thinks if he does some kind of a major action with Cuba, it's going to be some kind of a good legacy for him. And I don't think he's just like hard-headed about it or stupid about it. I think he has this ulterior motive that he's like trying to annex territory or something, which is significantly worse than being stupid. So don't get me wrong, that's where I'm going with things. But I mean,
Which is,
essentially,
again, it's good to hear from a guy like this Bishop fellow because like it's clear that he's not on the Trump team. He's not on Team MAGA or whatever. He's just saying, hey guys, there's like a reasonable issue here. Like that's it doesn't have to be one and the same.
I feel like you're trying to say like, oh well, Bishop, your perspective on this is like all this big time James Bondy stuff. But what I'm trying to tell you is that like from my perspective, your position is yes, the government has subpoenaed. They haven't charged him with anything. They've subpoenaed Hasan about this very let's say pesky trip to Cuba because it required a lot of documentation, right? Like anything where you're having to get things cleared with U.S. government, it's certainly going to be a little heavy. So they're going to inquire with him about this heavy trip to Cuba. And it's either because they think that there might be something that happened with the Cuban government that concerns the FBI, or the FBI is just being mean.
When you say being mean, could you steel man what I'm saying on that second or? What do you mean being mean?
Yeah, by being mean, you're like, oh, well, the whole point is for them to, by issuing the subpoena, effectively what it's going to do is it's going to apply a chilling effect so that other leftist streamers won't go on more Cuban government-sanctioned political programs to the island. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't really strike me. Why didn't they do that to all the other streamers that were on that trip? Because they didn't. And some of the other streamers that were on that trip are pretty big
ones. They picked the biggest ones, which was Hasan, right?
Well, the
one who was the biggest and loudest
one?
voice. Well, I don't know how big Code Pink is, but the biggest one.
So why did they do Hasan and not the other people that are pretty big?
That's my question.
My answer is because they probably weren't at that specific bar with that specific intelligence asset.
Do you know that?
No, but I mean, do you?
So you're just
Like, what's
wildly
your
speculating as to why they're picking Hasan. I'm saying there's
not
probably a pretty good
wildly.
reason. Give it no, yes, you literally had to make up. He was at a bar with this specific intelligence officer. You have no idea if that's true. My answer is they've already shown a pattern.
Both of your
going after
positions
the
are
biggest people.
speculation. Hold on.
Okay, and one
Both
of
are
them is
speculation.
completely made up, Wick, and the other is on a precedent of the past 3 years of or 2 years.
Do you think that there's no
So, I'm sorry,
precedent
which
of
these have
Cuba
some
trying to use
credibility?
its intelligence resources to affect American politics?
Of course there is.
There's decades of it. There's decades of
Why
precedent.
didn't they try to do that with any of the other people in the Congress?
How do you know they didn't?
Well, I don't. Maybe we should subpoena all of them. Why didn't we?
Because there's probably
Why didn't we subpoena
information
Nick Shirley,
that
who
they
was in an
know
unsanctioned hotel
that
with?
we don't know that
No,
might,
no, they're
it
subpoenaing
could
with.
possibly be.
How
I
do
am
they know?
granting
It's
you,
so
it
much
could
easier to
possibly
have
be
these meetings
just
there,
a
right?
political
We don't know.
persecution.
Who
That's
could say?
possible. But it's equally possible. I have just as much evidence that it is
Just as much
serious.
evidence?
Yes.
Which
your
is not
evidence
much.
okay, here's my evidence. The Trump administration has been cracking down on anyone speaking up against them, including late night talk show hosts, including people in the government, including influencers. And your evidence is, well, Cuba obviously has interest.
Again, those things are bad, but let's analyze them. Why are they bad? Because Trump is trying to erroneously silence people. The very merits that they're investigating or the fake charges or whatever, it's all corrupt. And you can take it one by one in that there's no legal substantiation for any of it. The Hasan Biker situation is not that. We have a real interest in seeing what Code Pink is doing. This predates Trump. To lump these together makes it clear that this guy, the soy pill fellow, is not serious about being a liberal. He is clearly in some sort of socialist, communist camp, broadly speaking, pretending to be a liberal, because otherwise you understand the difference. You could say, yeah, I don't really support the government do it, but I understand why it's different from these other examples. But he knows, and we know it's malicious because, like this guy Bishop pointed out, he instantly understood what it was when it came to a tenant. He instantly got it. So it's ridiculous.
Oh, so they could have done
Well,
this.
no,
but they
Cuba
specifically did it with this
has
person.
done this for decades. They have tried to use their intelligence apparatus to influence
why
U.S.
didn't they do it with
politics,
Nick Shirley?
to
He's
influence.
stupid and influential.
This is something they've done for
Wait, why didn't they do it with
decades.
Nick Shirley?
Because
Why didn't they do it with
Nick
Nick
Shirley
He was in an
wouldn't
wait, I didn't
collaborate
ask you,
with
Bishop. I'm asking Wick. He was
Because
in a
they are
sanctioned
much
hotel.
less
Really easy.
likely to have any pull
check?
with Nick Shirley.
Wait, I don't
Now,
have
I
the
bet
evidence
you,
as to whether
I
or
will,
not
I
that's
bet you
true. Should we
$1,000
check?
right now. When
should
Nick
we
Shirley
check?
came back from
Should
Cuba,
we check?
he probably had the FBI go through his electronics, right, just to see if they got bugged or anything like that. Okay, I can't tell you that. But no, this is what they do. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like and I feel like fundamentally this is what it comes down to. And this is what I hope you understand, and it shouldn't sound like this, but I really hope you understand that this isn't a dig at you at all. But like the way this intelligence stuff works, there is no James Bond. There never has been a James Bond. Intelligence has never looked like that. It was all lies about World War II that gave birth to the idea that intelligence was James Bond.
Intelligence is busy work. It's paperwork. It's boring. It is, and that being said, too, the majority of this smug face, god damn it, and the majority of intelligence errors or crimes are going to be banal as well.
Intelligence looks like is just a fucking guy coming up to you in a bar and starting up a conversation with you and just eliciting responses. If you work in the steel industry, he's going to start talking about steel industry stuff, and then all of a sudden you're going to say that you're a CFO and blah 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 blah, and that's how it works. And it's not big. It doesn't have to be the nuclear codes. I mean,
I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen. I think you're confused as to what my opposition is. My opposition is not this stuff could be transferred this way. My opposition is not this stuff could be investigated for legitimate reasons. My opposition is there's a clear reason why I think they're going after these specific people in this specific context for this specific trip. And I don't think it's this very plausible thing that maybe this happened with intelligence and Hasan. It's why did they target this specific person on this trip for this specific trip and had an article that came out before he was even issued the subpoena targeting and centering around this person where they were outside his house taking photos of him. That to me sounds a lot more like a political hit piece against large influencers who are opposing the Trump admin and not, hey guys, here's a very real scare, which you have drummed up to the point where Wick can be like, well, that could happen, and I agree, it could, but is that really the most likely scenario here? And are you just ignoring everything else in context of this? That's what I'm opposed to. Not that, intelligence could be transferred this way, which is obviously true.
Well, I think a really great question that, frankly, I've done this conversation a disservice and not hammering home more, is a good question is, why are they also going after Code Pink, a super pro-Russian?
Yes, that is the issue, is that primarily speaking, I don't know if we would have ever seen this sort of activity from the DOJ if Code Pink wasn't involved. That is the big fish here. It just so happens that Hasan, another big fish, seemed to work directly with them and seemed to also be engaging in very similar suspicious behavior.
Outlet that is like super anti-Ukrainian and super worked into all of that tenant media collaborations and stuff. Why?
I don't know that Code Pink worked with Tenant Media. Can you tell me about this?
They didn't work with Tenant Media, but they share a lot of the influencers and they share a lot of the programs and they share.
Something that people like the soy people probably don't know, and a lot of people on the left, even left liberals, don't know, is that Russia is not just a vector of disinformation, whatever, for the right wing. Like we know from the Mueller report, wherever. But yes, of course, Russian propaganda sources have funded and directly contributed to and created bot farms for Republican media, but that is not at all what they're limited to. They go much further, and they fund a lot of the far left. A lot of the far left. We have, again, the problem is we just don't know because the Democrats are weak and they won't investigate this stuff, and Republicans are stupid and they don't know how to investigate this stuff usually. But there is an absurd amount of money that comes in from Russian sources for NGO networks and significantly left-wing nonprofits. Like, it just is the case. We've heard examples before, and there's a lot of smoke for this. Like, there's a reason why, for some reason, a large amount of the NGO verse and a lot of the nonprofits that do humanitarian activism are suspiciously either quiet, if not openly antagonistic against Ukraine. Probably the greatest humanitarian crisis on earth right now. So, like, or outside of Africa on earth right now. So, like, there's something to be said about that, man. It's not random, probably.
A lot of connections to that space because they're politically connected through those veins of the, like, what do they say, the anti-war left in the context of Ukraine, right? Where it's like, we're anti-war, we want to end the war, in parentheses, on Russia's terms. Okay. But once again, when you're like, oh, well, you're speculating, you're right. We don't know. I don't know. Why didn't they subpoena every single person on that trip if they wanted to chill? Right? Because if your goal is to get everybody to go, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to speak out, then you should want to see, oh, wow, they went after every single person that went on that trip, as opposed to people being able to say, well, I'm not Hasan Piker. I mean, look, 25 people went on that trip. Only one person was subpoenaed and the organization that put it together. I'm not a billionaire living in China. Why the fuck does this concern me? I don't know.
Seems like an argument in my favor. Maybe they do want to single out people that already have legitimate criticisms from people like me or you or other liberals, so that those people will actually let them get away with testing the waters of going after their political opponents, just as long as it's not them and people that agree and are on my team, right? Don't you think that would be an argument in my favor?
So it's not about chilling?
That is a chilling effect. What do you mean?
Well, it's not a chilling effect.
It's a chilling effect for the people that agree and are aligned with him. For the idiots who are like, well, this is fine because I think he's a hypocrite and whatever, I'm fine with him doing that. Those people might not be chilled. And then later, when it starts happening to them, then the center and more center, not left people are going to be like, that's fine. Those people are opposed and those people are hypocrites. And then they creep until they start doing this to everyone that opposes them, and they only have their little hug box like MAGA fucking circle jerk, right?
I guess it's just a place where you and I don't quite see down that same line. From my point of view, I think that if the purpose was chilling effect, then you would just go for maximum damage. What I think is much more likely in your vein of things is that it was for a popcorn headline. It's like, I'm going to be able to, what doesn't make news? All these no-name streamers. What does make a Fox News headline is going after a household name that is winding up in GQ.
So wait, are you agreeing with my whole point then? That this was meant to drum up like a big yellow journalist?
Bro, again, like, he knows how it works when it comes to Tenet. Somehow, everything evades him here. Of course, that's a part of it, but, like, things can have more than one part. Yes, that's an element to why they did this, but it's not the whole point. There's a lot of forces at play here and a lot of people who, especially career professionals, who do want to investigate sources like Code Pink. Perhaps it's partisan, probably for good reason.
Some story.
I certainly think that was a factor, but I mean, I've never posited that it was all or nothing, and I don't think that that's the case.
Okay, wait. So then maybe we agree. This was meant to drum up all the support against a person that everyone already hates and could be a big focal point to try to sensationalize this. And we agree that there's a possibility that this person might have communicated with intelligence officials in Cuba, right?
I don't think that it is a binary. I don't think
I didn't say those two things were not mutually exclusive. I just said two non-contradictory statements.
Well, the phrasing that you were using, and maybe I'm just being a little belligerent here, but the phrasing that you were using was it was to drum up a headline with yellow journalism, and maybe it was a problem. And the way I'm seeing is I think that decisions to do this are always seen as political. And so a decision was made. When you've got a lead like this, it's got to get through legal. And then it's got to get through executive review. And then it's got to get through fucking everybody. And at some point in time, there is a gaggle of people that sit down and says, let's add the pros and the cons. Is this worth it or not? And perhaps, and this might be your entire, justifies your entire position. Perhaps the only factor that made it worth it to them to pursue this subpoena was that they thought it would be good press for their program. Perhaps that's a possibility. But
I think it's a majority factor, to be clear. I'm not saying it's the only reason.
Sure.
And I would agree it's a majority factor. I don't think that changes anything about Bishop's analysis.
It's pretty clear that this is why they're doing it. But like in the same way, you can go after illegal immigrants and say, look, they broke the law. It's like, okay, but what are we really trying to do here? We're trying to make a spectacle about deporting people. We don't really...
Bro, oh my God. I can't believe it's the example used. The whole problem with the Trump administration is that, yes, illegal immigration should be dealt with. We should enforce the laws on the books. The whole joke with Trump's ICE is that for how much money we've allocated, it's an extremely inefficient vector for getting illegal immigration cut down significantly, or at least removing illegal immigrants. It is all spectacle, but that's the issue, is that the laws are not being enforced as the primary goal. It's secondary to the spectacle. Something being a proper enforcement of law and a spectacle does not take away from the first part. It's only an issue when it's spectacle and cruelty is the point. That's the problem with Trump's deportations, not the idea of deportations and enforcing the law. That's crazy, man.
Give a shit. The guy who has lived here for 20 years and has a legitimate business is also happened to be someone who crossed the border illegally 20 years ago. We want him the fuck out of the country. We want to make a spectacle of ICE going into this building and throwing them the fuck out. Like, okay, yeah, technically they broke the law, but
thank you for the 5 gifted subs on Twitch, Anachu. Anachu, I appreciate you. Thank you for that. But I guess the problem I'm having with your argument here, Soypil, is that I think that you're overselling the possibility. I think that this is like an isolated demand for rigor, that you think that we need all this evidence for our suppositions, which I agree, is just speculation, right? And the evidence of...
Wick, if you were the one doing this, I would put the threshold way lower, but we're agreeing this is the Trump admin who has a precedent of doing this for completely bullshit reasons against their political opponents, right?
Cuba also has a precedent for doing the things that they're being accused of here.
Who cares?
I care a lot,
no,
man.
Who cares?
Also, again, the bullshit reasons thing is hilarious because in all the examples he's mentioned and can probably think of, and that I can think of, when the Trump administration uses the Justice Department to go after political enemies, it's usually bullshit on the merits, as in what they're going after is ridiculous, and it's plainly ridiculous. In this example, it's the most obviously suspicious thing ever. Like, of course they would go after it. You'd be stupid not to, especially after, like, I like how these guys also think spectacles only go one way. It's just whoever's in power. No, man. It's about all of the spectacles. The whole Cuba humanitarian BS flotilla was a spectacle. The entire premise, the entire problem with creating spectacles out of politics is that you invite suspicion. You invite criticism in a way that you would not doing normal politics. That is the whole gambit, right? So of course this would be more likely to be investigated because they made it a gigantic media event. Yes, they openly made it more about politics and humanitarian goals. So of course it's going to draw more eyes and eyes from the government as well. That is ridiculous to think otherwise.
Of looking at the motivations of the administration doing it.
Because for me, that it makes it much more likely that there is a legitimate reason. Whereas if it was Ukraine or if it was France or Britain or somewhere else that was like an ally country or just a neutral country, then I would be much more on your side. But since it is
why did Trump throw out the Tenet media case?
Hold on, a hostile country that we have decades of conflict with, right? Then I'm like, okay, there might be some meat here that we would actually want. And
to be clear, you think I'm underselling, and the only thing that convinced your mind was a very specific, completely baseless speculation from Bishop that took 30 minutes to go. It is baseless. It's 100% baseless because you don't have any evidence that it happened. You have zero evidence that it happened. It's baseless, right?
Actually, no. The evidence that we have that it happened is that Hasan said that a government intermediary reached out to him and reached out to his people to work out a system for him to have, what was the term? It was something along the lines of consistent internet access. So as a fact of life, we know that there is a direct communication between a government official and Hasan specifically, not even the
this clandestine intelligence operation relied on him not telling the entire planet on a live stream that this happened. This is what we're using as our base right now. Oh, he told everyone about it. Is the speculation that Hasan is too stupid to make the intelligence operation work, right?
So what you're telling me is,
by the way, yes, Hasan is a pretty dumb guy. That's the entire joke with him. Like that, part of the reason why people are so frustrated about Hasan's monopoly on Twitch is he's not a very smart guy, openly so. That's. I like how he just puts this forward like it's like not even a possibility, let alone likely. Like, dude, he's not a savvy guy, and it's largely because in the past he hasn't been touched by these operations. That's the whole point. Like, he surely has done other things like this. They are just trying to attribute it recently, where things would not be totally legal if you put through a deep analysis of them. But the whole point is that he goes out of his way to do these things and receives no punishment. So, of course, he would just not consider it to be a possibility. Of course, he'll keep pressing the limits because why wouldn't he? Of course, that's not even just plain stupidity. It's just bashfulness, It's a lack of being afraid, So, like... Soypil this is a very, again, I hope he's on his fucking payroll because this is ridiculous.
There's no connection at all between Hasan and the Cuban government. That's what you're saying.
That's not what I said. Can you answer my question?
I'm sorry. What was your snark question?
What was my question, Bishop?
I just asked you. I'd like
So
to clarify.
the base that you are, well, this is actually has much more than just my speculation is, well, there actually was potentially a secret communication between Hasan and the intelligence operation. We know this because he went on the live stream in front of the entire planet and told us about it. That's the thing that we're saying is there a clandestine secret exchange of information.
Well, essentially every single conversation that he had that
I
wasn't.
like how also the Bishop guy and Wick has even gotten behind this. Has repeatedly tried to explain to Soy Pill, it's not it's not James Bond. It's intelligence violations are much more simple than that. And like, it's also just plainly analyze Hasan's content, plainly analyze the Al Jazeera video. Why would you not have at least a suspicion that there was coordination just with the video itself? And then you hear Hasan talk about how he's doing coordination with the Cuban government through a middleman, and Code Pink has been known to have illicit relationships, or potentially, illicit relationships with foreign adversaries. Like, this is like as suspicious as you can get. It's like walking into a crime scene and then there's someone on the ground brutalized, and then there's a guy with a bloody hammer in the corner. Like, that guy might have not done anything. Maybe he just came in and picked up the hammer, but like, wow, you couldn't make it more suspicious.
Live streamed on Cuba was a secret conversation. So let's just cut the snark out there. I mean,
okay.
That's a
it seems like there's constantly secret conversations happening in Cuba. Maybe we should be
yes, you should expect to be questions when you get back from a trip to a hostile nation. You should expect the U.S. government to ask you questions.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing when you go through Iran. Same thing when you go through any of these like no-fly list countries. I'm aware that they all ask you questions, but you're acting as if this is like, here's the specific scenario where the Cuban government is funneling this information campaign through this guy, and we're pretty sure this definitely could have happened. Therefore, we need to subpoena this specific influencer.
That's possible, and it's possible. It's plausible enough that it justifies, in my mind, potentially subpoenaing the guy to bring him in and ask him a few questions.
Which is more likely, that happened and we need to look into it, or that the Trump administration is trying to crack down on people?
In my mind, it's a coin toss.
Oh my God!
Why can't it be both? Like, you understand, when your enemies give you a layup, you take it. Like, it could just be both. That is part of the deal, right? If you give your enemies a reason to come after you, well, of course they're going to go after you. Like, that's the whole issue. So again, we can simplify it even further with the other examples of Trump admin's malfeasance with the legal system against his political enemies. Generally speaking, it's erroneous claims they fabricated, right? It's just complete it's complete lawlessness that they're trying to engage with. But if any of those people actually committed crimes, the Trump administration would still go after them for partisan reasons, but they would also be in the right to do so. The whole issue with it is that they're not in the right to do so. These are separate problems. I don't know what the conflation is. And then you can just be so smug about it too. It's just, this is a lot worse than I thought it was going to be, honestly.
Dude.
It just is.
The thing,
just get on your knees and suck Trump's dick, dude. This is fucking ridiculous.
These are
this, but
subpoenas like this
I don't know,
happen
man.
frequently. They just don't always make the
Cuban
news.
government right now? I don't know.
I wish they would give me some money to say that these sanctions are stupid. It's been 60 years and they haven't done shit, and it's ridiculous that
They haven't
undo
done shit.
What is the justification for the sanctions on Cuba today?
See, this is the issue. Is that fundamentally you have an issue with the idea that the Cuban government is hostile. What
Can you answer my question? What is the issue with the Cuban government that these sanctions are justified today?
The sanctions are justified today because Cuba consistently conducts hostile intelligence and military operations against the United States at home and abroad. As of right now, there are thousands of Cubans right now fighting against against Ukraine and United States intelligence assets in Ukraine. Thousands.
Okay, why are they doing that? Yeah, but why are they doing that? Is it just because
they're doing that? No, they're doing that because they are aligned with an axis of countries that are hostile towards us.
Why are they aligned with the axis of countries that are hostile to us?
Because they decided to have a communist revolution and they aligned with that axis of the world.
Yeah, they had a Marxist-Leninist come to power and do some authoritarian dictatorial stuff. They fell on the wrong side of the Truman Doctrine. We tried to coup their government and fuck with their country, so they really don't like us. We consistently make it so their country suffers, specifically right after the Soviet Union fell, and they had no trade partners, whether it was us or the USSR, from like 91 to 94. And now it's like, okay, now we're still fucking over your country in the 20s instead of trying to do what Obama did, by the way, which was just...
Bro, it's like an entirely separate thing. Like, first of all, I do think we're probably a little too brutal with the Cuban government, but the Cuban government is like if you have an American sense of morality, like that is a government that we should be adversarial against. Like, I just can't I can understand. This guy is not a liberal, by the way. Anyone who says he is, it's the most manipulative stuff these people do. This guy is a socialist. He is not a liberal, and the fact that he gets to skinwalk as a liberal is just ridiculous when you make arguments like this, when you try to diffuse any valid criticism into this weirdo, like, third worldist internationalism. Like, dude, get a grip, man.
Store these sort of relations because it wasn't justified and maybe we don't need to do it. And I don't know, I think also this has to do with a lot of stuff regarding like Cuban sugar, regarding Cuban voting populations in Florida, which is a swing state, and the idea that this is like they're evil and they hate us and that's why we need to do this. I think it's just ridiculous, like McCarthyism, since this
Did
is
you know that, like,
Again, one of the things about calling it McCarthyism, unfortunately, a lot of the McCarthyism was accurate. Like, yeah, a lot of it was bad, but also a lot of it was accurate. There was a lot of attempts of subversion. And this is an example of likely subversion, like political subversion, not for humanitarian reasons, but for ideological communist reasons. Code Pink is a Marxist-oriented and affiliated third worldist entity. They're not about getting people more aid. They're about changing the form of production, the modes of production. Like, this is, for some of the soy pill, it's either like they're politically malfeasant to the point where like this should be seen as like an enemy of liberalism, or they have so little understanding of ideology that they're not responsible enough to even discuss politics.
3 months ago, off the coast of Florida, there was a shootout between Cuban forces and 4 Cuban exiles. Like, there was a shootout. There's an active hot engagement.
One of the main things. This is one of the main things that Cuban intelligence is interested in the United States. The number one thing is they're interested in us not fucking with them. All right. Number two, a very close second is them hunting down political dissidents and families of political dissidents in the United States and fucking killing them. All right. So like this idea that, oh well, you know, it's just like this harmful little guy, and as you put it, they fell on the wrong side of the Truman Doctrine. Listen up. They align.
Yes. By the way, Bishop's right here. These are all things. Again, like, it's not to say we should be this brutal, but like, man, it's a rough. If there's a country that deserves our ire, there's not many better than Cuba.
With a geopolitical force that was intent on genociding the United States. Okay, this wasn't just like, oh well, they just wanted to have a Danish health system. That's not what happened. All right.
No, they had an authoritative government that shut down opposing political parties and imprisoned dissidents. I'm not saying this didn't happen. I'm just saying the idea that this now justifies what we are currently doing to their population, I think, is completely misplaced. Especially considering you are now far.
Why don't you elaborate on that? Why is it not justified? Because again, I'm not even saying I disagree principally, but I know the reason this guy has for it is bad. His reason is going to be because we should be trying to help them now because it's a humanitarian crisis. Bro, I'm sorry, but like, foreign entities cannot be tolerated sometimes if they're in your zone of influence, if you're in your zone of interest. Like, you shouldn't just enable them, right? Like, it's not America's job to enable these countries, and you have to, like, at some point have a justification or a response to that isn't just this simplified whatever mess.
Falling to the right of the Obama administration, which is like, hey, this is not what we need to be doing, and we need to undo these sanctions, right?
That's
you
actually not true.
You acknowledge that?
No, because I've said repeatedly that I think that the direction that the Obama administration was going in was significantly superior to this absolute insanity that the Trump administration is doing right now. So no, in fact,
do you think he was doing the right thing by trying to undo these embargo and these sanctions?
Yes, I do. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, that's why I went to Cuba.
Wait, why? They're so evil.
What do you mean why? It's because I think that
well, you're calling me like, oh, I'm ignoring the worst parts of it. I'm like, well, hold on.
Hold on. Do you understand that we can negotiate with governments and governments change over time, that we could perhaps sway them to be more on our side? The problem is it failed. Obama tried the reset, failed. It failed. Right? We tried to reset with Putin,
that's not why
the Bush era. It failed. We tried to reset with Cuba.
Why do you think Trump undid the Obama administration's policies?
Why are we so friendly with Vietnam and all these other post-communist countries?
By the way, this is the killer question you can always ask people like Soy Pill. We had one of the most bloody American conflicts with Vietnam. It was years and years and years. It completely marred LBJ's presidency. It was awful. It was horrific. It instilled an anti-war sentiment that lasted up until 9/11. And yet, if you look at the countries that have the greatest opinion of Americans prior, at least to Trump too, Vietnam was like top 3, I think, consistently. The Vietnamese love us and we love Vietnam. We have such a great relationship with Vietnam. It's because these and Vietnam is still communist. It's still a one-party communist state. Now, of course, they have a more socialist policies, elements like state capital, whatever, but they are a one-party communist state still, and we have an incredibly friendly relationship with them. It's because they are a diplomatic ally. They made overs to, try to become more amicable with us. They did politics. They did negotiation. Cuba is not like that, because the problem with Cuba isn't the communist part. It's that it is a ruthless government. That is the issue. It's a ruthless government that has no desire to relinquish elements of their borderline oligarchical system. They are a brutal system, and they want to maintain that. They don't want to work with the U.S. They don't want to compromise. They don't want to do the things that would be reasonable to have sanctions be lifted. It's similar to Iran in that respect. And you know what? That's fine. If you want to be oppositional, sure, but to then whine and cry about it, especially when Obama gave them a horrific or an incredible chance and they ruined it by doubling down on their worst excesses. Like, this Soy Pill guy the more I hear from him, the worse he comes off.
No, wait. Stop moving on. Why did Obama do these things, and why did Trump undo them? Why didn't Obama undo them if they failed? Wick.
He got out of office.
It's a bad question, by the way, because it's not Trump 2, it's Trump 1 that undid them. And the reality was Trump 1 very different players inside the team, right, than Trump 2. The reason it was undone during Trump 1 was because they failed categorically with Obama. They were able to get no concessions out of that reset, and there was no reason to keep enabling a country that was sending people here to assassinate political dissidents. Like, that's crazy.
Trump
No,
won.
that's not what he wouldn't have then reversed them. The reason they undid it was
Wait, hold on.
because
Do you think
by
after,
having this.
after trying for his years, and he was still trying, and he wanted Hillary to win, to continue that project?
Why did Trump undo them? Do you think Trump undid them because they failed?
Trump does what he does because he's just
No, again, this is Trump 1. The Trump admin undid them because you had neocons in the admin. That's why it happened. They said, this is not working, we're done. Not Trump himself.
He probably hated Obama.
Why?
But simply because he did it for an illegitimate reason doesn't mean that there weren't legitimate reasons to do that.
There could have been legitimate reasons, but that's not
There
why
are.
it happened.
There are.
No, it happened. It happened because they wanted more Cuban, anti-Cuba, pro-Republican Cuban immigrants who could immediately go from refugee to civilian in Florida, and they could keep that state red. That's why that fucking happened.
Also, I'm sorry. Like, maybe there's something I can read that like would indicate this more. What world does that matter? Like, to a reasonable degree, the Republican Party already has a strong foothold with Cuban diaspora people in Florida specifically, and the Democrats are not turning on that in any time. Like, how is this the analysis? How do we make it the most simplified nothingness thing that doesn't even comport to like distinct polling differences? Like, there's absolutely nothing I've ever seen that would indicate that that is what's keeping the GOP in power in Florida. Like, they're going to be Republican regardless. Maybe you get some more people that have this aggressive a position, but the GOP is going to be naturally, especially in Trump 1, they're going to be naturally against Cuba. This is what a lazy analysis. Why is this guy's job politics?
Nothing to do with whether or not the Cuban government was becoming more amicable because we were going to stop sanctioning them.
And a lot of people support good things for bad reasons all the time. That's how politics works. It doesn't mean that it's all or nothing. I mean,
What's the end
point
game
is,
if we just sanction Cuba forever?
Well,
Eventually they'll give up?
The end game is that eventually they will collapse.
Just 10 more years, guys. Just 60 more years. We'll get them. Or maybe we could try to restore relations and make them more amicable to us, which was Obama's.
Do you think that we haven't done that? Like,
no, we haven't. They undid it. They undid it.
We've succeeded with almost all of the post-Soviet countries. Half of the fucking planet was communist.
Yeah.
And we've succeeded overwhelmingly in patching up these relationships. And it's utterly bizarre.
And not succeed overwhelmingly, but so many of these countries become some of our greatest allies. That's the worst part of it.
What, 5 that we haven't fixed the relationships with and be like, oh, it must be the United States that's the problem? That's insane.
Wild to me that you would.
Did we do the same amount of sanctions on Vietnam and then we just undid them?
Like, I don't.
Did we do the same amount of
sanctions on North Vietnam and then we just undid it, right?
Yes, we were significantly harder on Vietnam than Cuba. Are you like what?
Were we? Just because why? Because we invaded, not because we like tried to invade.
Well,
you think we didn't try to do that?
The smug, like, gross swarminess, dude. He really, dude. This guy sucks.
Fucking Cuba. We tried to do the fucking Bay of Pigs. What are you talking about? Like, the Bay of Pigs. Like, yeah. If you don't think it was strategically advantageous, we wouldn't have invaded Cuba. We're literally talking about doing it right now.
Yes, correct. I think that we were very. I think we went very light on Cuba. I think if we wanted to do something really horrible, if we wanted to be.
Why is he laughing? Like, if we absolutely like the whole controversy of the Bay of Pigs was that we like decided it wasn't worth going full on at the time compared to other adventures like Vietnam. Like, yeah, man, we actually did kind of lay off Cuba. That was the entire controversy, is that, you know, we didn't make the investment into that for a variety of reasons, but yes, we let Cuba off easily comparatively. Again, that's not even morally loading it. Just in pure politics, it's just what happened.
Very heavy-handed with them. I think we would have done a full-scale invasion.
I don't think we should. I don't think we should.
Literally try to do that.
Well, the Bay of Pigs isn't a full-scale invasion. The Bay of Pigs is
right,
more like
because
what
we realized, yeah, maybe there was.
Hold on, the Bay of Pigs. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. But the Bay of Pigs, we simply provided weapons and promised to support to
the opposition. Yes, we did not send Americans. Well, actually, there probably were Americans on the ground, but we will never acknowledge that. So
yeah, and what did we find out? We thought when they got there that there would be a popular revolution against Castro and that they would help the forces that were going there, and then they didn't. So we gave it up. We said, we thought the Cuban people wanted this. We thought the Cuban people would overthrow Castro. But then, oh my God, it looks like they actually like the guy. So what happened? Castro stayed alive 50 miles away from Miami for the next 80 years. That's what happened.
And
so yeah,
I
think we were a lot harder on Vietnam. That's what
it didn't fucking work, right?
I mean, it worked out in the long term.
We lost thousands of. Yeah, why is our ally, Whick?
Because they approached
because of liberalism.
Yes, they wanted liberalism. They got liberalism into place, and they decided.
Well, first of all, Vietnam is a communist country.
Decided to go with America.
Vietnam is still a communist country, Whick.
But it was still liberalist, the liberal international order.
We established trade relations
I
with
think
them.
the liberalization is a little less important. It's more that Vietnam is a less morally repugnant country than Korea. That's like the bigger thing, is that like you can have a country that remains more communist, that remains more socialist. Like, we're not in the Cold War anymore. It's more about how does this country behave? How do they treat their own citizens? How do they engage with trade relationships? Are they going to screw us over? Are they going to, rescind on things illegally? These are the bigger questions. And the reason why countries like Russia are problematic is because they're not trustworthy, right? There is so much corruption. Vietnam succeeds because its corruption is largely limited, and they're willing to do real diplomacy. That is not Cuba. It's why the socialist element matters less today. It's much more about these bigger picture things. It just so happens that most countries that fully, double down the socialist element are just are uniquely corrupt.
Friendly to us because we have some sort of incredibly draconian embargo on their country, right? Which is what Obama was trying to get to.
I don't think
to restore
Vietnam had been hunting down dissidents on American soil.
Maybe that was a proximity thing, but you don't think that the North Vietnamese would absolutely have been fucking doing that if they could have? Like, we were able
Doesn't matter. They could have. They didn't. Like, guys. It doesn't matter, bro. That's not the question. The question is, why is the treatment different? It's about proportionality. You just said, well, maybe if they were closer, they would have done that. Like, yeah, but now proportionality would have been different, of course. Like, bro, this is a horrific showing for this guy. Oh my
And that
lord!
helped us normalize relations. The problem with Cuba is they haven't. They're close enough that they haven't stopped. They have continuously conducted intelligence and military operations against United States assets globally.
You think Obama didn't know that? He's like, whoa. They're killing us? All right, no, undo the sanctions.
Well, first things first.
Like, what are you talking about?
Obama has some of the worst foreign policy of all time. He was a fantastic domestic president.
Which, by the way, yes, that is, and that is this is also a good test for people who are truly liberals and people who are socialists who are trying to use the liberal moniker to infiltrate the Democratic Party. Obama was not skilled in his foreign policy. They made bets and they were bad. They made really bad risks. They tried to they went too I would say not isolated, perhaps too dovish as a way to course correct from the Bush era's psychotic military ambition, right? And most liberals will acknowledge this. And again, I think that Obama had a lot of successes domestically, but foreign policy-wise, man, like, aside from the JCPOA, which even that is mixed, like, it was a really disaster after disaster after disaster, like the Syrian Red Line, like the allowing Russia to just fully invade Crimea and annex it. Like, and again, the fact that the soy pill's response to this is just, again, it's just smugness and then evading the actual substance of this debate.
His foreign policy takes were unbelievably horrible, from Syria to Ukraine to Afghanistan to Iraq to all of it. So Obama's foreign policy was fucking terrible. The only thing that might have been somewhat okay was Iran, maybe. And there's a serious question mark there.
Yeah, sorry, hold on. I'm being ambushed by this Uber Eats guy in this hotel copy room.
Get your food.
Let's take a photo.
Hey, welcome to Wick TV. Are you going to wick out for us? Hell yeah, let's do it. Okay.
He's on stream. What's up, man? All right, nice to meet you, man.
What are we eating?
I didn't Uber Eats anything. He's delivering it to someone else in the hotel.
Oh, you're not getting some yummy ramen? Damn.
I'm not getting any yummy ramen. But you know who else isn't getting it? Is fucking Cuba, because they're sanctioned right now, Wick. So sorry, I did not hear the last 3 minutes. I got distracted.
Kill Cuban dissidents. Maybe.
Yeah, I certainly.
First of all, wait. Do you think we do that? By the way, do you think we fucking kill Cubans and shit all the time? Like,
I am certain that we conduct military operations against our intelligence operations against our adversaries. But here's the difference: when American interests come into conflict with any other country's interests, I want American interests to succeed.
Yeah.
Any American interest, even if there's some crazy interest like, hey, we don't want US aid because even though this might hurt what I would perceive as American interest, we don't like this program.
Correct. Boom. That's a big one.
No,
yeah, it is an opinion, of course. The whole argument that Wick is making is that the USAID cancellation was not in our interest, but our aggressive posture towards Cuba is in our interest. Yes, of course, it's an opinion, bro.
Well, yeah, that's your opinion. What is America's interest? Is it in America's interest to coup the government in Chile? Technically, yes. Is that good? I don't think so. So it's not in my interest. Like, what?
Not all actions that America takes and American administrations takes have been in American interests, right? They have done so for their own personal gain, for their own petty.
The American government couing Chile is because we want to.
Hold on. Do you think that Trump did anything because of what's in America's interest?
There's a world where that can benefit our interests, though, and there's a world where it doesn't, and it depends on the analysis. Of course, there's an opinionated position. There's what having principles is called. You're able to make these calls. This guy can't, because I genuinely, again, maybe it's more like less intentionally malicious, more just stupidity, where this guy is a socialist. Like, his principles are that of a illiberal socialist, but he just doesn't want to commit to that and doesn't know why, and he just pretends he's a liberal for, I don't know, rights or whatever.
Do you think it's in America's interest?
What do you mean?
No, hold on. You're sitting here. You're telling me that Trump is taking America's interest into account when he decides to go into Venezuela.
what do you think American interests are?
American
Do you
interests
think
are
this is
things
an
that will help the
objective
people of
thing?
the country that will help us be stronger, wealthier, more powerful, all these things.
Isn't the whole
Yeah.
idea that one of the biggest problems that we have with Trump is that he's acting like an authoritarian dictator that does things in his own personal interests that don't reflect the well-being of the nation? Isn't that like our entire argument? Because it certainly
Yes,
is
and
mine.
isn't this an opinion on what is best for the country? Because some people think that having oligarchs in charge or commanding Venezuela's country using our power is better, and that therefore it's good to coup and take out Maduro. Like, this is an opinion. That's the whole point.
Well, you're
like, what is
asking us
America? I don't
our
oppose. I know what your opinion is. The idea that it's like, well, I wouldn't support what America's doing if it went against America's interests. That's your opinion. That's the whole point. American interest could be, hey, I think sanctioning Cuba is good, and yet a whole administration ago it wasn't. So why is that like this arbitrary metric on what you and I think is good is like how you measure whether or not what America's doing is good? No, it should be whether or not it's a good thing in our opinion, sure, but not calling it American interests. That's an opinion from you and me. What is best for America? I think it's best for America to establish good diplomatic relations, stop hurting people in Cuba.
Let's not-
That's technically against what Trump says is the American interest, right?
You can't just say it's your opinion, man, as if all opinions are equal in this conversation. Like I can say with
I'm saying that you can't
just my
say you can't
opinion
appeal.
that it's in
It is
American
just your
interest to
opinion.
support Ukraine
That is your opinion.
rather than Russia, perhaps. But my opinion here has more evidence to back it up to being correct than the
Right.
opinion someone might
Yeah,
have
it's a debate on opinions. What the fuck is this?
that
Right.
Russia is in our best
So you
interest.
can't. So just don't appeal to what American interests are. Appeal to this is the evidence of why this is good. I think we should stop sanctioning Cuba, not because it is an American interest to stop sanctioning Cuba. I think I don't want the people of Cuba to suffer. I think there's no point in maintaining this embargo long term. This is not going to end well for that country. It's not going to benefit us in some amazing way, and we can establish a better trade relation and make this country amicable to us, just like Vietnam is. And just because Trump says or fucking Marco Rubio says it's in America's interest to keep this embargo going, we can both look at that and say, no, not really, right?
No, I think American policy should be putting American interests first, and I don't think that we should be removing that from the dynamic and trying to take some weird internet, oh, well, this is just objectively good, whether it's American interests or not. Like, no, America, we have shown the world what it looks like when we have the mantle. Take a look at Western Europe and take a look at Eastern Europe. There has never been a more benevolent international superpower like us. So I think we have enough credibility to say that American interests are objectively good interests. I think that we've eradicated poverty.
Objectively
I think-
good. Every American
yes.
interest is objectively good.
Overall, yes. I
Okay,
think
ask the people of like anything south of the
well,
border of that if they think so.
well, if-
But-
if-
Again, this guy doesn't understand. What a smug prick, dude. Instead of actually just responding to the argument, he does this weird thing, and he's not on the upper hand. When this guy says, "I think America's interests are objectively good," generally in the broadest sense, in general, he's saying that because if you're an American with American values, you would, generally speaking, understand that the fundamentals that this country is built on and that it's acted with are, broadly speaking, objectively moral, in the sense that we believe those morals are accurate. They have an objective quality to them. Of course, that in itself is a subjective disagreement, but that's a reasonable argument, and it's the baseline opinion of every American politician in all of history, no matter if they're right or left. Like, of course, you have to believe your principles are objectively good. Otherwise, you'd be a revolutionary. You would not engage with the political system. At least you would not engage with it democratically. You would see it as illegitimate. And the fact that this guy is like, why don't you ask the victims for that? Like, it's the laziest response possible.
went wrong somewhere. Okay, so
No, you just said they're all objectively good. I have a nuanced
No, he said
opinion. You said they're all
overall.
objectively
No,
good.
you're not. It's not. It's the. This is the appearance of a nuanced position, but it's because there's a lack of having to actually defend the position because they're not attacked. Which to Whick and Bishop's, to not their credit, they should be attacking him on this. They should not be permanently on the defense in his argument. That's it. Again, this is a good debate tactic, I guess. But Soypill, curious how he's never having to defend his position. It's constantly interrogating them, constantly accusing them of putting forward this James Bond plot, even though they keep saying, no, it's not it, blah, blah, blah. And then we're in this argument now about American, foreign policy values. And for some reason, the Soypill hasn't had to put forward an argument. He's just questioning them, interrogating them, giving his little snide remarks. It's repulsive, man.
Overall, as in,
okay.
not
okay.
all
I'm
of
not
them,
saying-
but
I know this is
overall, we
crazy.
do more good than bad. And I think he's just correct. $5, let me get these out. $5 from Real Determinatus. Soypill is just memeing. He's just being a contrarian for contrarianism's sake. He doesn't actually believe that this is that unfathomable. Thank you for $5. And then $5 more from Black Pilled Kiwi. You know how to tell that Obama had shit foreign policy? The only thing the left gives him credit for is those policies. Ha ha ha. Thank you for the $5. There you go.
Yeah, I think
To be
this is
clear,
a
I'm
really
not an America bad person. I do think America has probably done more good overseas than they've done bad, but that doesn't mean that there's objectively good that everything in America's interest happens, right? Like, I wouldn't even say overall. I'd say it's much closer to like a 60-40 sort of situation when you look at the damage that we've caused across the planet. But I would much rather America be the hegemon than Russia or China. Sure, yeah.
if it was 60-40, which I acknowledge, it might be. I don't think there is an international hegemon that would develop a society in which people could meaningfully say that. I think that is one of the all-time strongest parts of liberalism, is that we are fundamentally, as a people, looking at what we do and saying, hey, that thing that happened in Chile was really fucked up and we need to make sure that we never do it again. Because nobody else would do that. Nobody else would look, self-reflect like that. I mean, the Soviets can't even acknowledge how many people died in Afghanistan.
If you saw that after the subpoena, it actually came to a point where they did find that Hasan did something illegal by paying someone, like even something as simple as like a shop owner he wasn't supposed to, and they decided to sanction him by financially or legally, would you say that this kind of goes against what you just said about us being able to self-reflect on those sorts of things? Because they're kind of probably going after him for saying America bad for whatever reason he is saying it. A lot of reasons, by the way, I don't think are legitimate, but a lot of them are, like the Chile thing or any of the other things we're doing in the Americas.
Yeah, I hope this answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to ask it again. I think that fundamentally, if Hasan faces any kind of consequences for what he did in Cuba, it would be a catastrophic. There would be a catastrophic mistake and missed opportunity somewhere. I think if the absolute worst
and
thing,
again, I disagree with that. That's a fine opinion for this guy. This guy's thinking much more institutionally, like much more like bigger picture government institutions for intelligence. I'm thinking more politically, and I think it would be good for him to face consequences if he did something illegal.
possible happened while he was in Cuba, whatever that is. I think that what we should be getting out of it is cooperation from Hasan, and that should look like Hasan's life is effectively not changing, but he's exchanging, giving us information related to whatever that imaginary nightmare scenario is. So any scenario.
Okay, wait. Can I agree with you there? If Hasan was doing something on the level of tenant media, where it's like, hey, we are going to start paying this guy to disseminate Cuban propaganda, Cuban government propaganda to your audience.
That's a really weird pivot, huh? Let's get out of the actual debate topic. Let's get out of the actual material facts and say, well, if Hasan doesn't actually weigh like a much more extreme version of what he did, then it'd be okay. Like, who fucking cares, bro? What does that have to do with anything?
Of a bajillion people, and this was discovered. I would agree that if the American government was able to investigate this and then say, all right, maybe we should track these sorts of payments and be transparent with the American public that this person is paid, I would agree with you, right? That this would be a bad thing. Okay. Do you think the Trump admin cares about that?
Fuck no. The Trump admin's retarded.
Okay, cool. Me too. That's why I think this is all bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Like,
weird how that just reduces into that. How we reduce the entire argument to that. That's just, again, their fault for not, or I guess the bishop's fault for not pressing it more. But damn, what a stupid premise for this soy pill.
I think that basically anything coming out of the Trump administration requires extra scrutiny. But I am extremely reluctant to enter the world in which, the Trump admin did it. Well, I'm just going to throw it out the window.
Well, I'm not throwing it out the window just because it's Trump. All right, I will give credence to Trump if he does a good thing. Okay, well, I don't think this is one of those things.
I think it's in spite of Trump, not because of Trump doing a good thing. I think it's in spite of Trump. I think that we have an incredibly robust bureaucracy, incredibly robust institutions that still somehow manage to do effective things in spite of idiots in charge. I think Venezuela is a really spectacular example of that. Is that when you look at the American military, we can do unbelievable things, but our leadership is so rotten that what do we get out of it? Nothing.
Okay. Wow. We have gone about an hour and a half now. Do you mind if I open up for callers for about 20 minutes? Is that cool? Everyone got some time?
Let's do it.
Yeah. And gang, if you want to call in, if you were listening
so I don't know if I'm going to go to the viewer call-in because I think we've got the substance of the debate out here. And I guess just to summarize, I don't think the soy pill even put forward an affirmative argument beyond his thesis. There was never any recognition of the substance of how easy it is to create these intelligence violations, how competent and how complex these illegal foreign connection networks could be on the left when he understands how they function on the right. And there was no willingness to engage with any of the substance of really any argument that Bishop made. So like in some ways it's kind of like a not worth watching, but I think that these sort of debates can be really helpful to illuminate. Like, this guy is not a liberal. Like, this guy is a socialist, and he does not want to indicate it because he has some sort of vision of human rights or morality that doesn't feel like an easy fit with the history of socialism. But this is not someone who cares about the American form of liberalism, at least. So, I don't know. Really nasty stuff, and not a fan of a soy pill, but cool to see this Bishop guy. I'm gonna check out his other stuff because he's an interesting fella, it seems. And yes, I think I'm gonna stop the stream now. So anyone who was watching, thank you, I appreciate it, and I'll upload this to YouTube later too with some editing or whatever. So yep, thank you guys. I will see you later.